Ready? Reconvene the meeting of July 10th, 2012. Roll call.
The record will reflect that Councilmember Daigle has an excused absence.
Closed session report.
There's no closed session report this evening, Mayor Gardner.
Will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilman Rush Hill and remain standing for the invocation by Bryan Eckelmann of St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church.
Please follow after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will you pray with me? Almighty God, we acknowledge you are the first source of every good thing in our lives and in our world. And so we ask foremost that you be pleased with this evening. Open ears and minds, inspire ideas, enrich conversations, soften hearts, empower plans. On this month, dear God, where we celebrate our country's past, we thank you for those leaders and public servants who have gone before us, who by your gifting and guidance have accomplished great things that are worthy of our remembrance and deserving of our appreciation. May their example inspire each of us to deliberate over puzzles that still have no solution, over issues that still have no answer, over the weak who still have no help, over the lonely who still have no voice, and over challenges that still have no champion. And yet, God, may our gratitude for what you've done through some keep us dissatisfied with what we are now. May your faithfulness in the past give us confidence that we can still learn more, love more, help more, and put more of your might at work in our own lives. Dear God, we have regrets over our past. Convict us of how we have spent your blessings so casually and so selfishly. Forgive us for trying to tame your message and water down your challenge. Forgive us for when we have in myriad ways squandered the opportunity to let our lives describe and our words declare that you are God, ready for our repentance, deserving of our devotion. And so, Lord, may our lives live out the hymn that our country 'tis of thee, sweet Lamb of liberty. So, God, shed your grace upon us. Keep us creating and inspiring people who love and serve and give as you have loved and served and given to us, so that our community may be a place where you, O God, are comfortable and where others can see what you are doing, because so many are helped and so many are willing to help. And so today, the work may be ours, but may the glory be yours. In your name we pray. Amen.
Phil Castillo. Come forward, please. I have a proclamation. Whereas, on May 5th at 5:45 p.m., Phil Castillo was fishing on the 56th Street jetty in the city of Newport Beach, and he noticed individuals struggling in a rip current near 54th Street. He directed another individual to call 911, and, as a former Newport Beach lifeguard, he quickly jumped into the ocean to assist the distressed swimmers. And Phil witnessed one swimmer attempting to stay afloat by pushing down the other. Phil freed one swimmer, allowing him to swim to the jetty and climb up on the rocks, and he was then able to assist the other swimmer. He utilized his lifeguard training by placing him in a cross-chest hold position, allowing the swimmer to breathe easier and stay afloat. And Phil swam around the rock jetty, where the two were assisted ashore by lifeguards to awaiting firefighters and paramedics. And whereas, due to Mr. Castillo's quick and heroic actions, 2 lives were saved. Now, therefore, I, Nancy Gardner, Mayor of the City of Newport Beach, on behalf of the entire Newport Beach City Council, do hereby recognize Mr. Castillo for his heroic actions and present the Newport Beach Fire Department Heroic Act Award.
Well, I float pretty well, so.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, notice to the public.
The city provides a yellow sign-in card to assist in the preparation of the minutes. The completion of the card is not required in order to address the city council. Speakers must limit comments to 5 minutes on agenda items. The city council has the discretion to extend or shorten the time limit on agenda or non-agenda items. As a courtesy, please turn cell phones off or set them in the silent mode. Now is the time for council announcements or matters which council members would like placed on a future agenda for discussion, action, or report.
Councilman Hill,
Nothing.
Councilman Rosansky,
Nothing, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Curry.
Just a couple of things. I was privileged this past week to, on behalf of the mayor, present a certificate to Bill Hosfeld, who is the outgoing president of the Newport Balboa Rotary Club. Newport Balboa is the Rotary Club that's sustained our sister city relationship with Okazaki for more than 20 years, and our great community partners and many things that we do in the city. And then also on the 4th of July, I was privileged to participate in the Mariners' 4th of July parade at Mariners Park, to participate in the American Legion Old Glory Boat Parade, and also to give welcome comments at the dunes for the 4th of July celebration there. And then earlier, last week, presided at the Oasis installation of John Whitney as the new president of Friends of Oasis, and congratulated Scott Paulson on his great service as president for the past 2 years.
Thank you. Councilman Henn.
Yes, a few things. I had the great honor of participating in the Mr. Irrelevant arrival party at the Dunes Resort on Monday, July the 2nd, wherein we welcomed Chandler Harnish to the city of Newport Beach. Chandler was drafted number 253 in the NFL draft, dead last, but he was drafted. And that puts him a lot higher than a lot of others that never made it. So happens Chandler is a native of the state of Indiana, as am I, and a graduate of Northern Illinois University, as am I. So it was a lot of fun to welcome him. He was drafted by the Colts. They brought him in leading a white Colt with a blue and white Colt towel across the back of the horse. So that was kind of cute. And then the next night to attend the Lowsman's dinner, that's as opposed to the Heisman's dinner, honoring Chandler, which is a kind of a roast format, and that was a lot of fun too. And so it was just really a great thing. It's a great event that the Salata family has organized and maintained over 37 years here in Newport Beach. In addition to that, on July the 4th, we had a little celebration here on the peninsula, as we usually do. And this year, as we did last year, we led off that celebration with a family-oriented parade, starting at 38th Street Park and going over to Channel Island Park, where we had a festival at Channel Island Park afterwards. It was great fun for all the families and the kids. At the festival, we had a dunk tank. Mayor Gardner led off the parade in the dunk tank.
There's going to be no shortage of Little League pitchers, I can tell you.
Yeah, she cheated though. She had a wetsuit on. I participated as well in the dunk tank, and so did our city manager, Dave Kiff. He looks a lot better with his shirt off than I do, I have to say. But in any event, it was just a great event. We had tremendous number of favorable comments, including some people who went out of their way to tell me that they used to leave Newport Beach on July 4th in order to avoid the craziness, and now they stay with their family and kids because of the kind of events that we organized. I say we, city staff, Dave Kiff, our city manager, and our great Parks and Recreation staff led by Laura Detweiler, and a lot of participation from citizen volunteers that really made it all work. This is a big step forward, another step forward in terms of the cultural change here, where we're reformulating how the 4th of July is perceived on the peninsula. We're going to keep that up. Thanks to the police department for a wonderful job. Later in the day, when things did get a little crazier, I understand that it was not nearly as crazy as it has been, and so we appreciate that very much. And then next, we do have a Tidelands Management Committee meeting on Wednesday, July the 18th at 4 p.m. at Oasis. We'll be continuing our discussion of the Tidelands Infrastructure Management Plan, Master Plan, I should say. And so that'll be another very good meeting. We hope a lot of the public chooses to attend. We want as much input as possible. And that's it.
Thank you. Councilman Selich?
No announcements tonight.
I have two. One, I was paddling this morning, and I came across 2 dead koi. Now, that doesn't seem like very significant, but koi don't live in salt water. The point is, though, that nothing should be placed in the bay or the ocean that's foreign to it. You don't know what parasites they might carry. You never know what the consequences are. That's what happened with taxifolia. Somebody emptied their aquarium, and suddenly we've got this huge problem with this marine vegetation. So I just wanted to caution people not to empty things out into the bay or the ocean. Secondly, there's an item I'd like to bring back, have staff bring back to council for further discussion. When we were going through our discussion of the lot merger on Ocean Boulevard, I thought that the concerns of people were very real, and I thought that the way we resolved it with the help of the Planning Commission was also very good. So as a working document, that the side easements would have to total what the side easements would have been of the original lots, and that the total square footage could not be more than the combined maximum square footage on the merged lots. And that way we can discuss it and see if we want to make some changes to our lot merger plan. So thank you. All right, consent calendar.
All matters listed under consent calendar, items 1 through 13, are considered to be routine and will all be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. Council members have received detailed staff reports on each of the items recommending an action. There will be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time the City Council votes on the motion, unless members of the City Council, staff, or the public request specific items to be discussed and are removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Members of the public who wish to discuss a consent calendar item should come forward to the lectern upon invitation by the mayor and state their name and item number. If the optional sign-in card has been completed, it should be placed in the box provided at the podium.
Councilman Henn?
I have nothing to pull, but I did want to note that in terms of consent calendar approval of the minutes for the study session last time, I did recuse myself for the discussion of the City Hall reuse item, and therefore I'm going to just record an abstention on behalf of that item as the minutes are approved.
Councilman Selich?
No items to pull.
Councilman Hill?
Nothing to pull.
Councilman Rosansky?
Nothing, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Curry?
No items.
I have none. Staff?
I have a clarification on item 10. That item is about the library policy. We refer to I-7. It's really I-2. There's a typographical error there. And then staff is recommending pulling number 12, so Visit Newport Beach can make a presentation.
All right. Would any member of the public like to remove an item?
Mayor Gardner, my name is Jim Mosier, and I would like to speak to items 5, 10, and 13.
All right. Anyone else have an item they would like to have removed from the consent calendar? May I have a motion?
Move the approval of the consent calendar with the exceptions of items 5, 10, 12, and 13.
And with the correction?
And note of the correction.
Second.
All right, please vote.
Abstention. The motion carries 6-0.
All right. Mr. Mosier, number 5.
Mayor Gardner and members of the council, my name again is Jim Mosier. This item is a request by city staff to authorize you to pay another $53,000 to a firm in Malibu that has been already paid nearly $400,000 to represent us before the California Coastal Commission with regard to our applications for the Marina Park and Sunset Ridge parks. I sincerely believe, as I've said before, that I think we would have been better off having our own staff deal directly with the Coastal Commission staff. And I have concerns about the quality of work provided by this particular firm because checking the records of the California Coastal Commission meetings, it appears that most of the clients who have been represented by this firm have failed to win the approvals that they were seeking from the Coastal Commission. But my reason for pulling this is a constitutional concern I have. It's one that I repeatedly raised in written comments in the past, but have never received a response to. I have the naive belief that when a constitution limits the powers of a government, its citizens should be able to rest at night knowing that those limits will be respected. The California Constitution contains what seems to me a very reasonable clause that ensures cities don't obligate their citizens to vague and open-ended contracts or offer persons after-the-fact bonuses. Article 11, Section 10A of the California Constitution says a local government body may not grant extra compensation or extra allowance to a contractor after a service has been rendered, or a contract has been entered into and performed in whole or in part. Yet we as a city are forever amending and adding to old contracts, such as the present one, which, as I understand the staff report, was a binding contract with this firm to provide services for which we have already paid them. Worse than that, staff is asking you, in this case, to grant extra compensation that, as I understand it, is not for added future services, but for services already rendered. The plain language of the California Constitution says you can't do that. So I think I'm understandably puzzled why we're doing this tonight. At a very minimum, I'm pretty sure that the original agreement said the firm could not exceed the original contract price without prior written authorization from the city. If they were given that written authorization prior to tonight to do this extra service, which they already did, I would like to see that authorization and to know who it was that had the power to grant it. Beyond that, I think it is just the practice of constantly amending old contracts is just bad public policy. In this case, it's the Sixth Amendment to this contract. If we see a need for new services, I think what we should do is negotiate a new contract. Keep things clean like the Constitution says we should. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. City Attorney.
Just briefly, I think it's important to address this issue because Mr. Mosher has raised it in the past. They're not being paid twice for the same services that they're rendering. They're being paid for additional and extra work. So there's no violation of the California Constitution or any other rules in this case or in the other cases cited by Mr. Mosher.
Thank you. Do I have a motion? Please vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Mosher, number 10.
Mayor Gardner and members of the council, my name again is Jim Mosher. The agenda says for this item that the library staff is asking your approval of a revised policy regarding use of the library, which, as the city manager pointed out, is erroneously called out as policy I-7 in the agenda, even though the city clerk knows it as policy I-2. And the city staff is asking for this, even though it was previously approved by the Board of Trustees, who adopted it, in fact, wrote most of the language way back on December 5th of last year, and according to the agenda by the city attorney, who it says approved it on December 22nd. Library staff is apparently holding off posting this to the library website and enforcing it until they get your blessing, even though a policy for internet use, which was adopted by the Board of Library Trustees just 2 months ago, seems to have gone into effect immediately without any need to inform either you or the city clerk. I find it perplexing that the city staff is profoundly confused regarding the roles of the various parts of our government as expressed in our city charter, which I perhaps find excusable. and that the city manager would be approving the placement of this item on the agenda in its present form, which I find less excusable. Library staff seems to view its role as one of responding to customer concerns by writing new policy, and if those policies are, in their view, important or perhaps controversial enough, then putting it into effect, they seem to think that they need to obtain 3 stamps of approval, 1 from the Board of Library Trustees, 1 from you, and 1 from the city attorney. This idea of simultaneously serving 3 masters, each of whom might approve some different version of the same policy, is not only cumbersome and impractical, but, as the city manager should know, is completely contrary to our current charter. As I explained in my written comments, the power and duty to create rules and regulations for operation of the city's library is and has been since 1920 placed in the Board of Library Trustees. Under the charter, this power was formally given to the board by the people of Newport Beach, and it was not and is not subject to approval by the council. That does not mean that you do not have control over the libraries. Indeed, you were at the same time given complete power over the size of the library budget, and if you're unhappy with what the trustees do, you have absolute power to appoint and dismiss the board. But much as with the city manager himself, that you also select for us, you were given no power to second-guess or override most of their actions. By contrast, the role given to the city attorney, which the librarian seems to think she needs the approval of, is a purely advisory one, and even you were not given the power to enlarge that role. The city attorney's office has never had and cannot even be given the power to unilaterally veto or rewrite city policy, whether they are set by the library board, by you, or by anyone else. In summary, since under our current charter, the council has no power to set rules for the operation of the city's libraries, this motion being recommended to you by staff is absolutely meaningless. You could just as well be voting to approve the federal budget. It's not a power you have. Your vote will mean nothing. It might even be illegal. To avoid giving the appearance of exercising the power not given to you by the charter, I recommend you simply receive and file this erroneous report from the library staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
Good evening. My name is George Schroeder. I don't know if you have the authority or not, but I will say that the library currently is being used by people that think they have a right to camp out there and bring personal belongings and interfere with the correct use of the public libraries. If the trustees ask the authorities to do this, I think that's great. They should. If I don't believe they have a police department to enforce these regulations, so I don't know if it's meaningless or not, but I would encourage you to vote and approve this, because I imagine when we have to remove people from sleeping on the sidewalk, we will be calling our Newport Beach police, and so I'm not going to try and split hairs. I support what we can do to improve the ability to use our wonderful public libraries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan Purcell, Corona Del Mar. I'm going to speak on this item and kind of bundle a couple of other things in with this. The Board of Library Trustee meetings are some of the craziest public meetings I have ever been to, frankly, and you're not allowed to make comments. It used to be that they would publish, you wouldn't see the minutes until you arrived at the meeting, and if you had been quoted in the minutes, you didn't even have a chance to review them, and you had to comment on everything at the beginning of the meeting. One of the items in there in this policy is talks about adequate bicycle racks are provided at each facility. When I go to the main library, I'm usually there for city meetings, and I like to park my bike back in the bamboo courtyard. It's a safe place. It's out of the weather elements. It's just a good place to park. Basically, bicycle racks are a misnomer. Most people who have decent bicycles, they don't use racks. You don't rack your bicycle. You can't put your wheel in it. It would damage it and a whole variety of things. So when they're saying that there are adequate racks at all these facilities, there really aren't. at the main library, you've got something you have to like roll your wheel in. My wheels don't even fit in these racks. It's in a place where it's not secure. You can't keep an eye on it. It's out in the weather, out in the element. And we spend tens of millions, probably literally hundreds of $1,000,000 on parking lots in this city. And we can't even get a bicycle parked. I might maybe recommend we put one pole in the middle of each parking spot, and then I can go in and park my bicycle in one of those spots. Maybe I should get a big SUV and drive to the library instead and park it. I think this policy is misguided. I know the city manager, when he goes to meetings there at the library, I always see his bicycle parked in the building, literally in the meeting room. I just want to park my bike in the bamboo courtyard outside, not even in the meeting room. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there other public comment? Would staff like to comment?
I take the fifth. I guess I'd note, in terms of Mr. Mosier's comments, there are, you can go down the list, there's 10 different council policies about the library dating back to, furthest one I can just thumbing through, looks like 1980. So for 32 years, we've had policies about the library, and I think your forefathers and foremothers on the council always thought that these were appropriate things to put in a council policy, and I think this continues that spirit.
Okay. Please vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
Number 12. This is you, Gary.
Yeah, I pulled this item, and it's a chance for Visit Newport Beach and Gary Sherwin to make a presentation about last year and this coming year. So welcome, Gary.
Thank you, Dave. Mayor Gardner, members of the City Council, it's a delight to be with you tonight and kind of update you a little bit on what's been going on in our industry. I know, Mayor Gardner, during some of your talks in the community, when people have asked you how the city is doing, you've said it's doing great. Thank you very much. Any questions? You can all leave now. I wish I could get away that easily in reporting to you. I don't think you will let me off the hook, though. But the message very much is the same, and our industry is doing very, very well. And I don't think that's any secret to any of you, because you've seen the room tax collections. Our industry is thriving. It's actually performing better than much of our competitive set. And I'm going to go into some of the detail, a little bit of what we've been doing and some of the things behind that. Before I do that, though, I want to acknowledge some very critical individuals who are very important in what we're doing. And I think we have a very talented staff. We have 16 people who work very, very hard on weekends, travel, give up a lot of their family time to represent this community. They do an exceptional job. But we also have a group of volunteers, and these volunteers are the folks that show up every month, and they give their wisdom and guidance and oversight and make us a better organization and make sure we're doing the right thing. And I want to introduce them because they are really sort of the unsung heroes, and I think they are as much, if not more, deserving of all the recognition that this organization has been receiving, because it really is the strength of these folks. Certainly our chairman, Tom Johnson from Johnson Media. Tom, right here, who's our leader and our chairman. Debbie Snavely, who's moving into her new home in Corona Del Mar tonight, so she couldn't be here with us. Linda Beimforth from Hornblower Cruises and Events. Andy Theodoro from the Dunes, who's just arriving. Daniel Cooper-Smith, our new general manager from the Hyatt Regency Newport Beach, who's also here tonight. Candace Biscotti, who's from Access Destination, who is not here. Homer Bluedow, our former city manager. And then the addition that all of you brought us, which was an outstanding addition to our executive committee and has brought a lot of great wisdom, and that's Dennis O'Neill, who I know you all know very, very well. And this body is the group that really kind of helps us craft and deliver this particular program of work that I'm going to be sharing with you tonight. Here's some quick numbers. You've seen, obviously, the occupancy tax. Here's how it kind of breaks down the reasons why the occupancy tax has been what it is. Our occupancy average so far is up roughly 4.4%. Now, the numbers that I'm getting here are reported by Smith Travel Report. I couldn't get them for June because those June numbers won't be ready for another couple weeks. So I kind of came as close as I could to the fiscal year. So it's a May to May. But you'll see that the occupancy was up, average daily rate is up, RevPAR, the revenue per available room, and that's the real measurement of success with hotels, is up 13.4%, which is significant. And obviously, overall revenue is up 13.4% as well, $153 million. So certainly our industry is doing pretty well. You've probably heard reports that the industry nationally is doing pretty well, and it is. But it is not doing well in all of those segments. Usually what happens right now is hotels have been trying to get rate, so they've been having higher occupancy. They haven't always been able to get their rate up high enough along with that occupancy. Our hotels have been able to do that and more. So all of our leading economic indicators have been performing very, very well, kind of in a special sweet spot as we like it. So how's this compared to our other cities here in Orange County? We are actually leading in all of these categories compared to our major competitive sets here in the county. Great news indeed. Many of you know about our brand promise, and I always bring this up every single year because this really is our guiding star. And you're probably sick of seeing it. I know a lot of people have seen it lately. Councilman Henn has seen a lot of it because we've been doing some work with Balboa Village. But this is sort of how we go about selling Newport Beach. When people say, what are the messages you're out there conveying? How do you represent this community to the world? This brand promise, as our staff will tell you, is the thing that really drives everything that we do in terms of our creative, in terms of our sales, in terms of our online presence. Really has to be able to deliver on this. And as you can see, we don't sell Newport Beach as one big monolith. We sell it as a collection of complementary, wonderful neighborhoods that all have their unique personality and character that kind of blend and make up this wonderful tapestry that we call Newport Beach. One of the programs that I'm particularly proud of this year is a new program that we began with Jay Johnson. And Dave, you should be very proud of hiring Jay Johnson because he is really a superstar as police chief. One of the things that we talked about when he first came on board is how can we better work together? And one of the things was how can we use the police force as ambassadors? And certainly on July 4th, we saw that very much in evidence. We know that the police have to go out there and enforce the law and do the things that they need to do, but they also engage with our visitors to a large extent. And we want to make sure that they understand a little bit about our business and that they're customer friendly as well as enforcers of the law. So one of the things we did is we came up with a program, worked with the police department in crafting it, called Be Our Guest. It's a hospitality training program for every uniformed officer. Every uniformed officer will be going through this program. It's the first program that I know of its kind in the country that's been able to do this because we know that when people come to Newport Beach, they're coming for a special experience. They have higher expectations because this is Newport Beach. So we want to make sure that we're delivering on that experience. I want to share with you a video that was done. This is a part of the training program that the officers see when they're learning about this. This is a message from Chief Johnson. I don't know if you can hear it. Video, yeah. They're pretty pictures.
All enjoying a safe environment, thanks in great part to the men and women of Newport Beach.
Mike, would not pick it up. Picking up.
After all, civilian staff, they're out there serving as ambassadors. We already provide an extremely high level of service. Our goal is to consistently exceed their expectations. With every positive encounter, we build and strengthen our relationship with the community we serve, which includes visitors and guests to our city. Visitors spend millions of dollars every year, and when they stay in Newport Beach hotels, they provide revenue to the city through a transit occupancy tax, or TOT, included in their bill. This fee contributes significantly to the city of Newport Beach general fund, which finances our department, enabling us to expand our force and grow professionally. So, let's continue to take pride in the city and the job we do for our citizens and guests every day.
Well, I'm sorry that the audio wasn't working very well on it, but I think you've got the message that this is a great message from Chief Johnson to the frontline officers that talk a little bit about the fact that their salaries and the income of the city is very much dependent on our visitors coming in and having a great time, and that we all have a responsibility providing that exceptional service.
I, for one, am interested enough in that video, maybe it could be distributed. I'd like to see it.
Great. We'll make sure that that happens. Yes. Okay. We're going to move very quickly here, but we've got some very big news here. I was promised about 15 minutes. Is that still okay?
All right.
Okay. The big news, and many of you already know about it because we have talked about it to some degree, but I'm here to at least officially let you know because we've been kind of muted on that, and that is the Bowl Championship Series, which, as you know, is sort of the college championship, will be hosted by Newport Beach in 2014. That means all the teams, all the media, the bands, the alumni groups will all be headquartered here in Newport Beach the first week in January, which is a great time when we need some business. It's going to generate 4,260 room nights with an economic impact of $3.1 million. And it is no easy feat to pull this together. And I've got somebody here on our team today that I want to acknowledge because she's the person who put this deal together. Amanda Kleen. Amanda, stand up. Let me explain the complexities of putting a deal like this together, because we're dealing with 8 different hotels, including one in Costa Mesa, because we couldn't even accommodate 100% here. But we had 8 hotels, 8 separate contracts, dealing with the BCS. And Amanda became somewhat of a legend in our office because while she was at Hoag in the maternity ward, literally, I don't know if she was if she was having ready to give birth any moment, but she was darn close. In the middle of at Hoag, she conducted a conference call with the hotels and the BCS to help pull the deal together at the last minute. So Amanda has done a great job. She's one of our best salesperson. Thank you very much for all the time, because it took her probably about 9 or 10 months to do this, and obviously this is a big deal for this city. So we're very, very excited about that. Let me talk very briefly about the TBID, which is the assessment on the 6 different hotels. All of the money from the TBID goes into the group market, meaning our group sales solicitation effort. The TBID took effect in May of 2009. You can see kind of where we've been in terms of overall bookings. After the TBID was created, we were able to hire some more salespeople, do some more sales initiatives. We've been able to steadily increase until this year where, as you can see, it really exploded. Our year ended up at about a little over 28,000 booked room nights. Even if you take out BCS, which is 4,200, you're still at 24,000, which is considerably over what we had the year before. So this year, the promise of that business improvement district really came to roost for our hotels, and they're really thrilled, because this is what we promised them if they created this TBID, that we could deliver greater room nights and a greater economic impact. Specifically, here's how it breaks down. The TBID budget was $1.5 million. The revenue of the booked meetings, and this is done through a calculator through Tourism Economics. It's not done by us. It's an independent source that actually calculates these numbers. The value of those businesses are 6.7. It's a 431% return on investment, and the total economic impact of those meetings, those 28,000 room nights, is in excess of $14 million. So you can see that the investment in the TBID has certainly paid off handsomely. Let's talk a little bit about the TOT budget, which is the large contract we have with you. This is how it kind of breaks down this year. We're looking at roughly about a $3.2 million budget. That's roughly about 5% more than what we've had in the previous year. For the last several years, we've actually tried to forecast, and we've always under-forecast even during our most ambitious efforts. So we've kind of reforecasted up a little bit. So that's the number we're looking at. These are the 5 major initiatives that we're looking at. Every year we try to say, what are the things that we're going to focus on? Much like the council comes up with its priorities, these are some of the things that we're going to be working on this year, in addition to our overall marketing. We are now working on a model called an integrated community marketing effort. We've talked with some of the council members about this. This is a more robust marketing effort where we can assist the city in some critical areas. Maybe it's providing marketing support for the business improvement districts. Maybe it's helping form a film commission. Maybe it's helping other forms of economic development. We're looking at trying to become a more holistic organization that can deliver greater value to the community. How this kind of evolves, we're still working on it. I know we've had some discussions with the city about this, but it is what we think is going to be the future for our organization. We're continuing to work on a drive market with LA. July 4th, we had a big effort at the Dunes, at an effort to create a new event on July 4th. We brought the Bengals out. There was a food truck event. It was very complimentary to what went on the peninsula. We want to bring more people down here and have them spend the night, particularly from LA and on July 4th. We want to take that hospitality program that you saw with the police, and we now want to move it to fire and lifeguards. We want to develop a program in conjunction with them. We think that that's going to be important. Our international marketing is also very significant in that our international base now is up to about 16%. Just a few years ago, only about 8% of all of our visitors were from international markets. Now it's more than doubled. The UK is still our most promising market. Australia, which we also opened up an office earlier this year, is now continuing to grow. So we want to take a look at that. We're also going to be working with the Orange County Tourism Association on how to work in pursuing the Chinese market. We're also going to continue, of course, to support the TBID and drive more of those group room nights. Here are the publications that we produce on your behalf. We have our visitor guide. We have a great stays guide, which includes home rentals on the peninsula as well as some of our smaller boutique properties. The pocket guide is actually connected with our police program in the sense that the police now have a device in which they can give to visitors. It's a fold-out guide that shows where restaurants are, where hotels are. It describes what the flags on the beaches mean. So it's really a helpful device that our police can use to help service our visitors. And then, of course, our standard Newport Beach map and a calendar of events, which I know has always been important from the city to have a comprehensive calendar of events. The kiosks, many of you see the kiosks around town. They're on in Balboa Village, on Balboa Island. You'll see them. We've updated them to reflect some of the new product developments that we've had here in town. We also have a QR code you'll see up there. If you use that on your cell phone, we have more detailed information. We've really tried to embrace technology. We think this is an important part of what the visitor is expecting of us as a destination. So we try to utilize that wherever we can. You'll see some mobile applications here in just a moment. Our online initiative is perhaps one of the things that we think are most important from a marketing standpoint, because so much of our marketing is developed online. We now have a full-time online marketing manager who does nothing but focus on social media, Facebook, Twitter, updates our website, making sure that we're responsive to comments that come through. In fact, even the cover of our visitor guide, we put it on Facebook, and within 10 minutes we had 87 votes on which cover did you want on this year's visitor guide. And the winner is what we chose for the guide. So we get a lot of instantaneous feedback in the online world. Mobile applications, 60% of all of our online inquiries now are coming from mobile applications, smartphones. So we're now in the final stages of beta testing a new mobile app. It's a mobile app that will actually let you know at any point in time where you are in town, what restaurants are nearby, what attractions are nearby. So it really kind of helps you navigate the community rather than just kind of a flat listing of attractions. It shows what you're looking for and what's closest to you. We're in the final stages. About 2 weeks from now, we are submitting this to iTunes, and you'll be able to go to iTunes and download your Newport Beach app. Online advertising, if you're a fan of Pandora, we do a lot of advertising on Pandora. Did some work with the Newport Beach Film Festival. It was perhaps the most exciting and actually most responsive part of our advertising program. And a lot of people listened to it and they responded in kind. So we've been trying to embrace some of these new technology platforms to get our message out rather than traditional print or broadcast. We're also working with bloggers and trying to plant our message with bloggers who might be able to help convey the message through their respective audiences as well. We certainly also still employ print media when necessary. We focus both on romance and family. These are two key markets that we think are critical to us and where our market segments are going to be most responsive. So we're focusing on both weddings and certainly romantic getaways as well as family escapes. And actually we have some research that bears this out that people in our drive market, these are two elements that they see us very strongly as a destination, particularly in LA. People in LA see us very much as a family-oriented destination. July 4th notwithstanding.
Gary, you're into your 15 minutes. Are we about complete?
I'm almost done.
All right.
I'm almost done. I just want to make sure that everybody understands some of the work that we're doing. That was my understanding coming today, Madam Mayor. Our advertising, we advertise California. We also do some online initiatives with Travelocity. We have some booking engines that allow us to be able to track when our advertising turns into an actual room night booking. And we've had a long-standing partnership with these. These sites are very influential, important for us driving business. We're also doing a new program with Virgin America and an in-flight video. If you're taking Virgin America out of LAX, you will see our new video. It will pop up on the screen in front of you at your seat, and you'll see a new destination video that will tell our story. We'll also continue to support LA, and in fact, this year we were, for the first time ever, at the LA Times Travel Show. I know Councilman Curry was there, and at that show we were named Best Domestic Destination in the United States over several hundred other destinations, and that was based on the attractiveness of our destination and its visitor-friendly nature. These are the goals that we actually employ, and the marketing plan that you received, and by the way, we have always given you a copy of our marketing plan. I think Homer Bluedow will even testify. We've always given the city a copy of our marketing plan so you can see what our goals are and how we perform, what our specific matrix for defining success happens to be. These are some of the goals both on the website, social media, advertising, and of course the various collateral elements that we have here as well. These goals are reviewed by our marketing committee and our board and vetted before we bring them to you. So with that, I'm sorry if I went a little long. I thought I had 15, 20 minutes to tell my story as usually I have. So if I've overstayed my welcome, my apologies.
That's right. It was all very interesting. So thank you.
I'll be happy to answer any questions anybody may have.
Are there any questions? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I actually do have a couple of suggestions. Well, first off, I think you are doing an excellent job here on behalf of the city, and that's a function of the extremely professional approach, true professional marketing approach that you bring to this.
Thank you.
And I'm sure the hotels appreciate it. So do we here on this dais, because you generate a very large tax base for the benefit of the city. I'm also very much intrigued by this idea of broadening your mission, which is what I take from your comments, into more of a community marketing organization as opposed to a, in the old parlance, convention and visitor bureau approach.
Yes.
And I think that's a concept it's very intriguing to me. I think it's one that we really do need to have a serious exploration of as we go forward here in the next 12 months. Because I see great opportunities for improved coordination, integration, efficiency, et cetera, for all kinds of marketing-oriented things that go on in the city and that are important to the city. I do have a couple of small suggestions. You had these goals up here. I assume that's in the nature of performance measures?
Correct.
And so next year when you come report to us, would you tell us how you did against the performance measures that you established at the beginning of the year?
We'll be happy to do that. And actually, we report every month to our board, too, and we'll be happy to send you those reports.
Yeah, and I presume those goals and performance measures have to do with compensation for you and your staff as well, and so I'm hoping and expecting that that gets integrated all the way through your process and in your organization. And next time around, when you come back, would you give us the prior year comparison on your budget numbers, just so we got something to compare it against?
Happy to.
Yeah. Great.
Absolutely.
Great job, Gary. Thanks for the
Thank you.
presentation.
Mayor Pro Tem Curry?
Well, Gary, again, congratulations on a great year, and I think these numbers are very important because what they point out, occasionally we'll have speakers come to the podium and suggest that the money that's invested through the hotel tax by our visitors that we use to generate tourism and travel is not money well spent. As clear by the evidence that you presented, it does in fact drive revenue to the city, as Chief Johnson pointed out in the video. It is these revenues from people who are not residents, who are not taxpayers here locally, but who come to visit our community that pay for and subsidize our public safety services, our police, our fire, our lifeguard, and the high quality of life that we all enjoy. So I commend you for that, because you and the tourism industry are truly one of the economic engines here in Newport Beach that keep our finances strong and sustainable going forward. I congratulate you on the mobile app. I hope that's distributed widely throughout the city so that local people have the opportunity to use that and better utilize our restaurants and our facilities throughout the city. But again, congratulations on a great year.
Thank you, Councilman Curry.
Councilman Hill?
Was that Henn or Hill?
Hill.
Thank you. I would just like to be a me too and acknowledge how grateful I am of the work that you do. But I'd like to go back and thank your volunteer board once again, because I understand the hours that they put in and the dedication that they give to help you be successful.
Absolutely.
And maybe with the exception of Tom Johnson, I don't know. No, in all seriousness, the work that you do is absolutely critical to the economic vitality of this community, and it's how we're able to not have potholes and to have great police and great fire and great lifeguard and all those positive kinds of things. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there public comment on this item?
Mayor Gardner and members of the council, my name is Jim Mosier. Behind all the flash and glamour you saw, technically this item was the filing with the council of legally required reports from our marketing contractor, VIII Newport Beach, and from our Tourism Business Improvement District, or TBID, which, as you heard, you created 3 years ago, and which we will also contract with VIII Newport Beach to provide. I would like to thank the city manager for taking the initiative last fall in the wake of a very unfavorable internal audit to improve our contract with VNB to require this minimal level of transparency, and also to remind them that as the so-called owners organization of the TBID, it was also required for them to file a separate report with you, a duty that they seem to have neglected for the first several years of the TBID's existence. There are too many curiosities in this VNB report for me to draw attention to all of them, but I would like to note that when the idea of the city stepping in to keep VNB's predecessor, which was called Conference and Visitors Bureau, afloat in the mid-1980s, the people who are sitting where you are sitting tonight were, I believe, told that we had 10 million visitors a year who came to Newport Beach. And I seem to recall you were told that same number of 10 million last year, and I found it curious, among many other curious numbers in this report, that it says now the visitors are 6.6 million. Apparently bookings are up, but visitors are down. As Mayor Pro Tem Curry knows, I've never understood entirely the benefit to me personally of attracting visitors to our city, but if this marketing exercise is actually scaring visitors away, you might want to reconsider why we're funding it. Another thing I found odd and surprising is that according to the budget, not on the slide you saw up here, but in this report here, VNB is planning to spend $105,000, which is fully 3% of all the transient occupancy tax the city gives to them, to fund its annual meeting. That seems to me a rather lavish expense to entertain 25 directors who are appointed by who knows whom. And speaking of meetings, I would like to remind you that VNB directors, when discussing matters relevant to the TBID, which is essentially everything that VNB does, is required by state law to meet in compliance with the Brown Act. I'm glad to see that the city has finally acknowledged this on the web page that it has added to our website describing the TBID, which those who are interested can find by typing TBID in the new and improved search box on our homepage of our city. That page says that the TBID is run by an executive committee that meets on the fourth Wednesday of the month at various member hotels, with the larger board joining them every 3 months, and that the agendas are posted at the City Hall 72 hours in advance. That's all great, but the problem with that is I am one of the city's most devoted followers of the bulletin board out here in front of the City Hall, and I recall seeing about exactly one time this year an announcement of a Visit Newport Beach or TBID meeting, and I was told that that was posted by mistake and it was promptly removed. I think we have a long ways to go in providing true transparency to what happens at Visit Newport Beach. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Tom Johnson. I'm chairman of the board of Visit Newport Beach. As Mr. Mosier many times is, he is once again wrong tonight. We didn't have there was no slide up there that said an annual dinner of $105,000. I believe the slide said $6,500. It is our one time a year meeting where we try to engage the entire community and let them know what the plan is for Visit Newport Beach. As far as transparency and everything goes, we have no obligation to have Mr. Mosier attend our meetings, but under my leadership, we have been grateful enough to him to allow him to annoy us and sit over on the side during our meetings, even though we don't have to. And so we are trying to have all the transparency we can. I apologize to you for what you have to go through here, but in the future meetings at Visit Newport Beach, we will close our meetings like we will plan. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Bring the issue back here. Is there a motion?
Move the item.
I'll second that.
Please vote.
Motion
Okay, I'm sorry.
unanimously.
Item number 13, Mr. Mosier.
Mayor Gardner and members of the council, this item is the appointment of 7 persons as the advisory board for the coming year on the Corona Del Mar Business Improvement District. What I find odd about this item is that the clerk last month, I believe it was, announced that there were 4 vacancies on the board, yet you're appointing 7 people, 3 of whom I assume didn't even apply for the job, and I don't know, I assume they're willing to serve, but I don't know if they are or not. What really bothers me about this is the implication in the staff report that the Street and Highways Code under which the bid was created somehow exempts the council and gives you the power to make these appointments independent of any other law. There is absolutely nothing to that effect in the Street and Highways Code. All it says that is if you are going to create a business improvement area, you as a council are obligated to appoint an advisory board. In the absence of any other direction, it would seem to me as a non-lawyer that you have to look for direction in state law and in the city charter. State law includes something called the Maddie Act, which has, in quite unequivocal terms, says any appointments you make have to appear on this local appointments list that is prepared by the city clerk and made available to the public so people know what positions you're appointing to people to, what opportunities are available, when the terms expire. None of our business improvement areas, or districts as we call them, are presently on this list, so nobody knows who is appointed when or for how long. And the second thing is that our city charter has in it well-defined directives in Charter Section 700 and beyond, which you're going to be reviewing tonight, explaining how, when the City Council wants to appoint an advisory board, how you are directed to go about that. It involves a system of staggered 4-year terms. It involves a system of the people being appointed being qualified electors of the city. And it involves the organization that you're appointing, if they have bylaws, for those bylaws to be on file with the city clerk. We appear to be doing none of these things. We appear to be appointing people independent of any law, and apparently for a 1-year term. I have no idea where any of these rules governing this came from or what is going on. Thank you.
Mr. City Attorney, did you want to say anything before the next speaker?
I have the same question. Maybe I can ask my question and he can answer both of them. Hate to be on. Bernie Svalstad, Corona Del Mar bid chairman, mayor, councilman. The last 10 years or more, We've elected our board, 4 members 1 year, 3 members the other for 2-year terms. Staff called me and said that they were going to put all 7 people on the council for approval. I don't understand where that comes from. The city attorney and the staff approved our bylaws. I don't know if you appoint 7 people now, if you're appointing for 1 year or 2 years. This seems to be a real, I don't know if somebody's changing our bylaws or somebody's, what's happening here. So I don't know if we're following the bylaws or following, I don't know what we're following personally. As a bid chairman, I'd like to answer the city attorney that question.
Are you through? You sit down then.
My question.
He'll answer the questions.
Yeah, so I guess first address Mr. Mosher's questions. You know, the state, we've basically been over this every single time that any of these issues come up, and we have an interpretation of the code that basically says the Street and Highway Code is the controlling law in this area, and the appointments are done pursuant to that law. Every time he comes up, it basically says something about how, you know, we're not complying with, you know, our council policies or other items, but the state law is basically what generates the authority to create these bids, and that's where that's basically where you're following and making the appointments from that. So he's completely wrong on the points he's raising as far as whether or not we're complying with the applicable laws. In regards to the 1 year issue, that's the term for the bids, and I think that's appropriate, but I'd be happy to talk to him offline and kind of explain our reasoning for that.
All right. Any other public comment?
Thank you. Robert Hawkins, Newport Beach. I probably should enter and ask a question of the city attorney since he's engaged in dialogue with the last 2 speakers, but I'll refrain from doing that. I've been concerned about the past 2, this item and the last item, where personal attacks have been alleged against one of our community members, Mr. Mosher. He's alleged to be mistaken, wrong, and yet we're making changes to a policy, and we're making changes to a bid where the bid chairman doesn't understand what's going on, and then the city attorney indicates he wants to talk to him offline. I think that that Mr. Svalstad asked a question in a public meeting. I think to the extent that the city attorney is going to suggest that the member of the public, Mr. Moser, is incorrect, we need to know why these changes are occurring. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there other public comment? All right, I'll bring it back to council. The staggered terms, that is an interesting thing. So what is the change? Why are we doing it differently?
Well, in essence, they formed them for a period of 1 year, so that complies with basically the same formation period. That's the reason you go to a 1 year period for the appointments.
The bid is 1 year, and so the appointments are 1 year.
That's right.
All right, so that is a change in the way we've done it, perhaps, than in the past.
Yes.
So does the bid have to change their bylaws then to conform with the state law? Is that a step they should be taking?
Yeah, we'll work with them to make sure that it's all in conformance, but that is the logic behind the change to the 1 year term and for the 1 year appointments.
All right, thank you. All right, is there a motion?
Move the item. I'll second.
Please vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
Sorry, I lost track. Yes. All right, public comments on non-agenda items. Are there any public comments on non-agenda items? All right. Oral reports from City Council on committee activities. Councilman Henn.
Yes, just one committee report. The Neighborhood Revitalization Committee met on June the 28th here in the council chambers. This was the continuation of the prior meeting wherein we considered the recommendations of the Balboa Village Citizens Advisory Panel in terms of establishing a new brand promise and brand vision for Balboa Village, as well as a myriad of other recommendations having to do with parking governance, economic development incentives, et cetera, for the village. The Neighborhood Revitalization Committee essentially accepted the recommendations from the CAP. There were some minor changes that were made, and we do have one open item that we'll be considering, and that I'll report on in just a moment. But those recommendations coming from the Citizens Advisory Panel will now be matured on to consideration by the Harbor Commission at its meeting on July the 11th, and then following that, they will be presented to the Planning Commission for review in July at their meeting Thursday the 18th?
The 19th.
19th, Thursday the 19th. And we hope then that that process will culminate in consideration by council at its meeting in August. And I hope for ratification of those recommendations largely as they have been presented. We'll see what council finally decides as a body. But nevertheless, I really do want to thank the members of the Citizens Advisory Panel of Balboa Village. They put in yeoman's work over a period of 6 or 7 months, many, many hours, lots of public input, and crafted with the help of staff, Kim Brandt, our our Community Development Director, and as well as other staff, and Cindy Nelson, the consultant that helped organize this process. I consider it to be a very effective, very inclusive, very transparent process that I think over time, as these recommendations, to the extent they're adopted, get implemented, will produce very favorable change in Balboa Village for the benefit of all the residents of Newport Beach. Thank you.
Councilman Selich?
No reports.
Councilman Hill?
No reports.
Councilman Rosansky?
No reports, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Curry?
No reports.
And I have none. There was a suggestion that we change the order of the agenda, but I think you had a concern, Councilman Rosansky?
Yeah, well, I think you were going to change it to move up the charter amendment
Yes.
to now, and I think that a couple of people approached me, and I, unknowing that you were planning on doing that, approached me and asked me what time they should be back, so I told them a little bit later, because that's at the end of the agenda, and clearly we just finished the consent calendar, and that item won't come up for a while. So, in addition, I think there's a member of the public that are knowledgeable of how our agenda works and progress, and might not be here. It's an important matter, and I don't think we should be taken out of order because we open ourselves up to claims that
All right. I think those are
we disenfranchise people.
good reasons. We'll stick to the agenda. So now we're going to hear about the Affordable Housing Amendment.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. We do have for you this evening an amendment to the planned community text regulations for the Newport Place planned community, which is located up in our airport area. This is a follow-up program that is required by our housing element that was recently certified by the state of California and, of course, adopted by the City Council. Assistant Planner Melinda Whalen has a brief PowerPoint presentation to give you an overview of the proposed changes.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. A brief background. The general plan designated properties within Newport Place PC with the MUH2 designation, which allows residential at 30 to 50 dwelling units per acre. The city adopted and state certified housing element identifies these sites as having the potential for affordable housing due to the density. The housing element includes 2 programs to address potential constraints to the development of affordable housing in this area. One is to provide a waiver to the 10-acre minimum site requirement, and 2 is to provide affordable residential zoning in the PC.
All right. Are you going to go into that a little bit or not? For those who don't remember, that when we were looking at this area during the general plan process, one of the concerns was that if we are going to create residential areas, we want to create enough residential area that you get the amenities that will help support that. But when we submitted our housing element to the state, if I'm correct, that they said, yeah, that's all fine and good, but that could preclude affordable housing, so you need to have this exception only with this particular type of housing. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, thank you.
So the Newport Place planned community is generally bounded by Bristol Street North, Jamboree Road, MacArthur Boulevard, and Birch Street. And as you can see on the right, the proposed PC land use map has the residential overlay opportunity for properties designated as MUH2 shaded in gray, and it mirrors the existing MUH2 properties on the general plan land use map. So this residential overlay provides development standards for lower income residential projects that meet certain criteria and waives the minimum 10-acre site requirement. These projects require a site development review by the Planning Commission. This site development review would address on-site amenities, land use compatibility, and integration into the existing built area.
So in other words, if someone says, well, I'm just going to plop something down here with some apartments in it, that would not necessarily be approved even if it was for affordable housing. It still has to meet some of these other standards, or at least have to be reviewed for those.
That is correct. Qualifying projects must provide a minimum 30 to 50 dwelling units per acre consistent with the general plan. A minimum of 30% of the units must be affordable to lower income households for 30 years. And the residential units can only be as replacement of non-residential units, traffic neutral, pursuant to general plan policy. The residential overlay also provides general development standards to address height, setbacks, landscaping, and noise. And I can speak to those more specifically if you would like. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the PC amendment, and the Airport Land Use Commission found the amendment in compliance with the Airport Environment Land Use Plan. I'm available for questions at this time. Thank you.
Are there any questions of staff? All right, I'll open this to public comment.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. My name is Linda Tang, and I'm here on behalf of the Kennedy Commission. We are a coalition of residents and community organizations that advocate for the development of housing for lower-income families that earn less than $75,000 a year. I'm here to provide written comments and to commend the city staff for their leadership in encouraging and facilitating the development of affordable homes for lower-income working families. We support the city's Planning Commission's approval to remove or recommendation to remove the constraints to the development of affordable homes by implementing Housing Programs 3.2.2 and Housing Program 3.2.3 in Newport Place. Newport Place is in the airport area, and in the city's certified housing element, it was identified as having the greatest potential in accommodating the remaining arena needs. The Commission believes that removing these potential constraints will allow for the development of affordable homes in Newport Place that will be a public benefit to the community, especially for seniors and hardworking, lower-income working families in the city who want to live in the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other public comment? I'll bring it back to council.
I'll move the item. Second.
Please vote.
Prior to reading the vote, I'll read the title for ordinance number 2012-14, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach adopting the Newport Beach Plan Community Development Plan Amendment authorizing residential development that incorporates affordable housing. The motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you. And item number 15, the second amendment to the amended Newport Dunes Settlement Agreement. Oh, that's the...
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one moment while we change our PowerPoint presentation.
That's all right. It gives me a chance to get some water.
This is an amendment to the existing settlement agreement the city has in conjunction with the County of Orange with the Newport Dunes organization. And if we could just dim the lights a little bit. Thank you, Layla. We have been in negotiation for an amendment to this to the settlement agreement to clarify some of the terms as it relates to some existing conditions on the property, and also to clarify some of the provisions on the property where there has been some ambiguity, I think, in terms of how much fees have been paid and the remainder on some of the obligations that are within the existing settlement agreement. So just in terms of orienting the City Council and the audience, this is an aerial view of the property. It's located at Jamboree and Coast Highway. It has been, I think, an iconic feature of the community for many, many years. The key changes that we have within the settlement agreement is to establish the maximum floor area ratio for the property at 567,000 square feet. This reflects our 2006 general plan limitation. This does not increase any of the limitations that were previously included in the settlement agreement, but it does expressly identify the 567,000 square feet as the maximum amount of building square footage allowed on the property. It also allows for some transfer of restaurant floor area within the overall Newport Dunes property, and from the east side of the lagoon to the west side of the lagoon, and specifically allows for the transfer of 4,600 square feet to the Back Bay Bistro. The total amount of square footage in the property is limited to 32,000 square feet of net public area, which when you look at the 567,000 square feet that's allowed for the property, you can see that it is a very small portion of the overall square footage. And the transfer of 4,600 square feet to the Back Bay Bistro Cafe area, which is on the east side of the lagoon, is a very minor readjustment of square footage within the property. There's also...
Is the same size as it is now? Is that what I was reading?
That is correct. That is correct. What it does is the transfer reflects the existing Back Bay Bistro with the enclosed outdoor patio area, so that there isn't any additional expansion that would be a result of this. There's also currently a restriction in the settlement agreement that limits the location of any charter boat activities to the west side of the swimming lagoon.
Is there actual charter boat activity there now?
No, there is not, because there is a pedestrian bridge that goes across the lagoon that would prohibit any type of large boat, of course, to enter into the lagoon area, and frankly, it's very shallow in that area. So I don't know at what time those charter boat activities would have occurred, but in the current settlement agreement and with this provision really is nonsensical, because there's no physical way that you could get a large charter boat into that area.
So there's no proposal at this point to remove that bridge?
That is correct. The bridge would remain in place. There is a proposal as part of the amendment to allow charter activities to be located somewhere else within the property, but it would be subject to the city's appropriate marine activities permit process and any required documentation to go with that.
That would go to the Harbor Commission? And
that is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
What's the definition of a charter vessel? Is it the big boats we see going around the harbor, or a six-pack fishing charter, or what? Is there any definition as to what it is?
I don't have that information with me. What Patrick Alford is reminding me is because of the bridge across Coast Highway, there's a limitation already on the size of the bridge. I mean, on the size of the boats that can actually get into that portion of the harbor. But again, I think depending on the tide level, it may have some limitations as well, so or allow larger vessels at different times. But I don't know the exact definition or the threshold for what we consider a marine activity.
Well, the lifting of the restriction, this was at the request of
Newport Dunes.
Of Newport Dunes. Well, they must have some rationale for asking for this.
Yes, and they
I would
are
be-
present, and they can
Okay.
address it.
I would, letting you know that I would like to have an answer to that at a certain point. You don't have to answer it right now. We'll go through the thing, but that's something I'm interested in.
Okay. Another addition or change to the settlement agreement is that the current agreement does allow for dry boat storage, meaning it's not boat storage that does not occur within the water. And there's a limitation now of 400 dry boat storage spaces. The settlement agreement does allow an additional 50 spaces to be put on the property as an interim use until such time the family inn is developed. And at that time, those 50 spaces would be eliminated from the property. There's also the existing boat launch area that is on the east side of the lagoon, which currently is striped for six lanes for launching boats. The settlement agreement includes a provision to, the existing settlement agreement allows the addition of a seventh lane. The applicant, or Newport Dunes, is requesting that it just remain at the current configuration of 6 lanes because there isn't the physical space to stripe that area for 7 lanes. Additionally, the settlement agreement talked about the addition of new vehicle trailer spots for vehicles that are pulling trailers on the property. There are currently 120 spaces. They feel that the existing 120 spaces does meet the demand for the boat launching activities on the site and are asking that the existing number of 120 spaces be retained.
What would be in those spaces? What would take that
They
place?
currently exist. There's
Right.
120, and it would just remain as is.
Oh, so they're saying, our initial agreement said they should provide at some point 185? Is that what it is?
Right, an additional 65 spaces. They're asking that they just retain the existing number of spaces at 120 based on what they feel is the adequate parking for the demand for the use of the boat launch.
And do we have any idea if there is more demand? One of the concerns of the Harbor Commission, I know, has been having access to the bay. Has any of this been to the Harbor Commission, by the way?
No, this has not been taken to the Harbor Commission.
Okay.
Another new aspect to the settlement agreement is that it recognizes that within the RV parking areas, the recreational vehicle parking areas, that there are alternative recreational vehicles which are actually, I think, to the layperson, look like little tiny cottages. They meet the definition of a recreational vehicle by the California State Vehicle Code. So the settlement agreement recognizes the ability for the dunes to put these ARVs in RV parking spaces, not increasing the number of RV parking spaces on the property, but having these available, and that these ARVs would be subject to our transient occupancy tax, just as any other type of RV or recreational vehicle that would be using the property. So that is something that is clarified as part of this settlement agreement. This is just an overview and a concept plan showing the future location of the family inn, which is on the east side of the lagoon, and is currently being used for storage of boats. There's a future restaurant site, which is about 10,000 square feet. I think it used to be called Anthony's. This is the pedestrian bridge that currently exists and goes across the mouth of the lagoon. The Back Bay Bistro is over in this location, and here's the boat launch area and the boat trailer parking area. I do want to mention that the proposed amendment does clarify the amount of the trip fee obligation that still remains to be paid in conjunction with the construction of the family inn, and the remaining obligation is $560,000 and $560,402. The other important thing is that there is a settlement payment that will be required in term when this agreement is executed, and that's $30,000, and that's to cover the cost of our outside counsel and staff time in preparation of this amendment. And we have received a request for continuance from representatives of the the Dover Shores Community Association. And we also have received a communication from Robert Hawkins regarding the CEQA determination. Staff is recommending that the proposed settlement agreement be found to be categorically exempt from CEQA. It is a Class 5 exemption based on a minor change in the land use limitations, and staff believes that's the appropriate CEQA determination for the proposed amendment. I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for staff at this point? I'd like the applicant. I have two issues that I'd like you to address. One is the charter boat. If the charter boat can't get in there, why are you asking?
Actually, what it is we currently have 4 Duffys, and we do have some fishing boat, small charters that occur. These are basically these are not our boats, but these are vessels that come in from the outside. But the Duffys belong to the dunes, and we certainly would like to continue to use those. We have no interest in any large party vessels to be used at the dunes.
Are you registering them as charter boats, the Duffys?
I can answer that, but probably. Most likely.
All right, well, we'll follow up on that. And then, how many of the boat trailers parking spaces, out of the 120, how many are rented right now?
During the week, it's limited. We probably have maybe 30 or 40 spaces taken. Weekends a little bit busier.
I'm sorry, it's not like a monthly where you park your boat there for a month?
No.
Oh.
No, this is just daily boat launch trailer fees.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
May I have a follow-up question?
Councilman Hill?
I was concerned when I saw the concept of charter once again, because instantly you picture 4-story ships that would cause PCH to be a drawbridge. Can you define, would it be appropriate for you to define charter as to what your definition is, and would it be appropriate to acknowledge hours on that type of thing?
Absolutely. We're certainly available to discuss hours. We're looking at, possibly early morning, maybe no later than 6 a.m. and no later than 10 p.m., which is our curfew period. The size of vessels, that can be discussed, but we're not interested in the party boats. And we're not certainly interested in having the infrastructure to accommodate party boats.
And then you are, in fact, talking about Duffys and talking about fishing boats.
Smaller vessels, probably up to 12 capacity.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not smart enough, but would that make sense to say that that's a 40-footer or less, or 30-footer or less?
Yeah, I think the 40-footer or less is a good way of putting that in place.
All right, any other questions of the applicant? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Public comment on this item?
Hi, I'm Bert Olig of 305 Morningstar Lane. I'm across the bay from the dunes. And, initially, the most important thing to me is that I understand this is public tidelands and it's designated for access. And I love to see families. There's a camp there now for children. Girl Scouts have camped there. It's really an appropriate, attractive use. Same with the RV park. It's an access that's not readily available for others, along the coast. I'm a little bit concerned about the current experiences we have. So when these requested changes come in, they're not completely defined in this document, not understandable. Also, I find some discrepancies in here with the way that the Dunes is conducting business and the way that it's recommended. My principal concern is sound. So I put together something quickly about the sound issue. What I'm referring to in this is the sound study. The sound study was done, so first the aspect that it's a community, that there are communities all around, it's a residential area, that it's in a bowl, that it's on the water. So it's from a noise perspective, it's as sensitive as it could possibly be. The sound study that was done made a number of assumptions, but also on this second page, you can see that it's at the largest extent of the dimension here, and many of the residents are considerably closer to that. Also, with the reflections off the water, the reflections off of the local structures or the elements of the bay, that it's considerably more volume in the various places.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at this, but I mean, I can see it covers distances, but it doesn't tell me anything about the noise.
So at 2,500 feet on the left side at the bottom of the hill was where the study was conducted. It's an area where there's attenuation of a lot of trees, there's houses in the way. So what I'm concerned with is that this study that basically talks about the noise levels that residents would be affected was done at a distance far greater than many of the homes. Specifically, I'm very close by, for example. The sound levels at my house would be considerably higher than the sound study would show.
Let me review that once again. You're saying that I'm looking at page 2, so that on the 2,500 number, that's where the sound.
That's as best I can tell. It wasn't defined on a map, but what they describe is across the street from Galaxy Park. Galaxy Park is wooded and attenuated throughout on both sides, and the sidewalk would be at 2,500 feet or the 2,250 at the bottom of the hill there.
Okay.
So it's at a significant distance,
Thank
is
you.
what I'm trying to illustrate. I'm sorry, I'm an engineer, and I'm trying to
No, that's all right.
avoid the
You clarified it
natural
for me.
engineer tendencies to go off. It'll get worse before it gets better. This is where they've erected a small stage now, and they're conducting some concerts at night. Because this came up, I chose to make measurements. On the sensitive scale on my dB meter, there was 70 decibels inside my window at 10:30 or 20 after 10 at night. The next night...
Isn't there a curfew? A 10 o'clock curfew?
Yeah, I think you're basically counting on the bands and the DJs. That's not working. It's not working. So the next page is the Newporter. It just means that we have to deal with a number of sources of sound, the series. None of this could remotely be considered within the noise ordinances of the city. The next page, this one, that's the clubhouse for the marina. The clubhouse for the marina is supposed to be for the marina, but there are some amazingly loud events there, and you can see at that point we're less than 1,000 feet away across the reflecting water from the dunes. The last page basically takes into account some of the unique aspects of the bay, very specifically the round surface on the back side of the dunes harbor and the Dover Shores cliffs. And what happens is that even when there are superb bands playing, like at the Newporter, unlike some of the local amateur talent that we have closer by, then we will get reflected sounds that make it really unpleasant.
All right. Your time is up. But that really, so far, what you haven't done is told us what in here is of concern, because right now you're already having noise. Is there something in here that's going to increase your noise or improve your noise?
I was led to believe that the tent was going to be up full-time. I was concerned, and you've defined, but I would love to see a very clear definition of what a charter vessel would be. We've experienced that before. I would look forward to some assistance in having the dunes comply with their existing laws before any changes. There was no outreach to the community. We don't understand this, and even staff had to ask questions, so we're dealing with something that's marginally defined. It makes us very concerned because the applicants have demonstrated a lack of compliance to date.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I think we have your concerns.
Appreciate it.
Dan Purcell, Corona Del Mar. I realize I'm speaking again tonight, but I just want to let people know over the last couple of years, I've attended hundreds of City of Newport Beach public meetings. This is my third meeting today, and I spend I don't know how many hours a week reviewing all of these items, similar to Mr. Mosher, and I attend harbor quality meetings, harbor commission meetings, water quality, planning commission. I'll be at a zoning administrator hearing tomorrow. So I am up to speed on current projects and plans, and so I want to comment on a variety of things on this. There's been some discussion, how many boats do we have on the harbor? We haven't really arrived at that number, where it's kind of an approach of go get mine now, get vested rights to all of these uses on the harbor and other coastal uses, and it's kind of a Machiavellian view. Just get out there and get it while you can, and I think we need to take more time reviewing what we can really accommodate on our small harbor. I would encourage you, I'm sorry, my leg's cramping. I would like to encourage more low-impact uses. I'm a big fan of opening up the harbor to people and uses, but we should look at those types of uses, low-impact, boats that don't create wakes or cause pollution or noise pollution or sound pollution and this and that. And I don't know that we're adequately addressing that going forward as we're vesting all these rights in people. I brought up the discussion of alcohol licenses in the city. How much is too much? Well, you can only give out so many alcohol licenses, and then, someone comes along that really deserves one. Maybe they got a cheese shop or whatever, and it makes sense to have a wine license. And then you're like, well, we've already given it to the nightclub down the street, and they're serving so much liquor now, you can't do it. It's the same thing with the boats and all these entitlements on the coast. I want to talk about some things I'm seeing where these projects where they come in here, it's kind of a bait and switch. They come in here, they say it's one thing, then they get it all passed, and then it becomes something else. We have a situation on MacArthur Boulevard where we're getting a curb cut over there on the Dolphin Striker, where you approved one thing. It looked like a nice, classy restaurant and some retail stores, and now it's a quick stop 7-Eleven liquor store. What was just approved, it's the Ridgeway project over there. So, saying one thing, doing another, and, right next to this project, not immediately next to it, you've still got the trailer park that's going to be all redeveloped, and then you've got where Pearson's Dock is and the kayak rental and all that stuff in the storage. That's being redeveloped. They want to put in a restaurant there, retail, residential in there, a 350-boat dry stack with an elevator and all that stuff. How many boats can we fit? It's a small harbor out there. It's actually a very small harbor. It's like a bathtub. And the more boats you get out there, you get all these wakes, and you can only do so much. So, at some point, we really need to look at the harbor. How much do we just give to people now? Thanks.
Thank you. Is there other public comment?
Hi, I'm Anders Folkedahl, Madam Mayor and council members. My wife and I have lived in Newport for 47 years, most of it in Westcliff, Dover Shores, 16 of it now on Morningstar Lane in Dover Shores, and I've been the president of the Dover Shores Association for 10 years. As my friend Bert said, a real problem is noise and lack of compliance with the current agreement. So you talk about an amendment to give more entitlements or change them. Our ask is, what happened to complying with what you've already got? Commercial on the water, if it's Duffy's and human-powered that they had in the lagoon, now that they put a Camp Jane in there, or James in there, with a stage and loudspeakers, if they want to move that, we've got no problems with human-powered or Duffy's. A sport fisher going out at 6 in the morning, yes, that's a new entitlement that we would certainly not encourage. It's not consistent with the Upper Newport Bay. The language as is too open. It just says commercial. I think, as Councilman Hill said, define it, and we're probably fine with it. That's why we asked for a delay on this, because we just got the data last Friday morning, and we have very little time to comment on it. As far as the clubhouse, the current agreement and the proposed new one says that's for marina tenants only. Yet, last weekend, the weekend before, there were parties in that, loud and noisy. I talked to the Dunes today, with all deference to you, sir. Your staff said, oh, for 50 or 80 people, the clubhouse is available. Well, they don't comply with what they've already signed. I question giving them anything new till they comply with what they already have. So what we're asking for is just a delay in it. Let's sit down and see if we can get some compliance with what they're doing. And we have no problem with reasonable amendments to it. That's fine. But we do have a problem with an open-ended commercial. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, why don't you hold on? Is there other public comment? Yeah?
Mayor Gardner, council members, Warren Parshawn, 300 Evening Star, Dover Shores. Dover Shores is a community of 320 homes. It's all along the cliffs, and it's the 3 avenues of water on the back bay back there. We've had, I am also the head of the beach committee and also the architectural committee for Dover Shores. We've had a lot of concerns lately. In the last 2 years, the amount of usage of paddle boards, which is a new sport, and kayaking and so forth, that's now coming down into our private waterways and into our private beaches. We have 3 private beaches at Dover Shores. They are posted, but we are putting larger signs up. We've had 2 fights in the last month and a half on those beaches because of oncoming people coming out of the dunes. We have an agreement with the Aquatic Center that they post, and they also give out flyers to ask their renters, their paddleboard and kayak renters, and to please do not use our beaches because they are private. We have nothing with the dunes. We've called them and so forth. We have not had anybody call us back or ask for what our concerns are. We're having a major problem with it at this point, and it's only getting larger with some of these expansions they're talking about. It is a concern with noise factor, of course, and you've already heard from my associates here on the noise problem. We also have liability problems that we will be taking, if we have to go to court to make sure that these beaches are not taken over by outside renters. We have problems that we don't want our community, nor do we want them to be liable or have problems with anybody getting hurt over there. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment?
Robert Hawkins, I'm an attorney in Newport Beach representing several groups. We've submitted comment letters, and I believe you have those. I will supplement the written comments by this testimony. I want you to take a look at your settlement agreement, handwritten page 9, typewritten page 3, and it is item number 2. I need new glasses. It is
Roman numeral?
Roman numeral 2.
Okay.
It is entitled Entitlement. So this is part of the amendment, and we are providing an entitlement. Now, the staff report doesn't talk about this at all. But what we're going through is we're reiterating, we're repeating what was in the earlier settlement agreement back in the mid-'80s and updated in 1990. But there has been no environmental review of this project since that time. Now, on what basis, with what environmental document are we supporting the family inn, the restaurant uses, all of this stuff, from our perspective, needs full and complete environmental review. Now, you've heard the noise issues. our comments talked about the traffic issues, because the most recent traffic analysis that you have for your environmental review is the general plan. And as you know, the Banning Ranch document said, well, the general plan traffic analysis was old. It was based in 2002. Well, that's 10 years ago. The environmental analysis is supposed to be providing you with information to analyze the impacts of this project. Now, I actually believe that you could analyze this project and come up with not only a whole host of benefits to the city, but probably some impacts that require mitigation that the city could benefit from. And I think that that's what you need to do here. We're not necessarily opposed to the project, but what we need is full analysis. And I think the full analysis, as I've said before in other settings, will get you something that you don't have today. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there other public comment?
Yeah, hi, Mark Miller. I live at the end of Westwind Way. Unlike some of my neighbors, I'm not on the water, but and I'm not aware of the impact reports they did years ago, but they definitely need to look at the sound issue again. If you look at page 2, I'm at 2,250 feet away, and as a non-engineer, I simply sometimes go outside and say, what the hell is going on? It is so noisy. I can clearly hear the DJ speaking like I am into this microphone. It sounds like he's at the end of my street rather than nearly a half mile away. So I don't have a decibel meter, but I suggest the city needs to come out and take a look at that again. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment? All right. We have a number of issues that were brought up. I don't know how does the council wish to proceed, or do you want to delay? All right, go ahead.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, members of the staff, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us tonight. I want to clarify a few of the things that you've heard and give you some background.
Your name, sir?
I'm sorry. My name is Ken Kramer. I'm an attorney. I'm counsel for the ownership. I'm with the Nossaman LLP firm. We have been working on this amendment for a number of years, and I want to give some perspective here. There's been discussion tonight that we are seeking new entitlements, that we are getting changes, that we are improving and increasing the use of the site. We've been referred to as the applicant. This amendment was not initiated by us. This amendment was initiated by the city, and I believe it was initiated as far back as 2005 or 2007 when Bob Burnham was city attorney. It was proposed at that time to document what had actually been developed on site. In 1980 and 1988, when the agreements were put together, the project was still under development and renovation. The current ownership acquired it in 2002. There were issues with prior ownership. We're aware of that. We understand it. As a result, when the city came to the current ownership some years ago and said, we'd like to document what is really there and clarify it, we acquiesced in that approach, and we went through this process. The process got stalled for approximately 2 years. We've now been in this process for, I believe, approximately 3 years, during which time I've been involved in the entire process. The goal of this document was to state what is actually going on. You heard Ms. Brandt reference the number of lanes on the boat launch. The launch has always had 6 lanes. The document had always said 7. There is no room for a 7th lane to effectively make it work. The charter provision is a new provision which I believe changes only the location. I was trying to find the provision while people were talking and still listen at the same time. We don't anticipate having large charter boats. The purpose of the charter request was twofold. One, we have 4 Duffy boats that are currently rented out. As a technical matter, the conclusion was those might be charters and therefore should be documented. There is a physical limitation on the size of a charter boat which could be utilized within Newport Dunes. The bridge establishes a limitation, the location establishes a limitation, The existing slips establish a limitation. The thought was during the recession, as both slips started to go vacant, that it might make sense to have a handful of boats available for charter. This isn't a critical requirement. We're happy to establish appropriate limitations to make sure that these do not create any sort of concerns or problems. At this time, there's no intent to even proceed down that path. It was something that was thought about some time ago as a way of covering some of the revenue loss from the slip loss during the recession we've all experienced. One of the biggest pieces of this document, two of the biggest pieces of this document, were established by the city. One is the desire to establish in the document the square footage limitation that was established by the general plan. That was not in the prior document. We agreed to have that in this document. That's the 567,000 square foot issue. Second issue was it took probably 3 to 4 months for ownership and the city to cull through their respective records and determine what exactly had happened with the fair share and traffic phasing fees. And by reading the prior document, it was very difficult for both of us to understand it. It was not documented. It was not clear what the total fees were intended to be. Thanks to the city and all the effort they went through figuring out what had been paid and how it translated, we now have a provision that we think clearly documents the amounts that were paid and, more importantly, the amounts that are still due to the city. We've been at this for a long time. We respect and understand the concerns with respect to noise. The Weiland study has been in place for 10 years. Mr. Theodoro did share with me earlier this evening that we had a problem last weekend with a customer's band that refused to leave the stage. Newport Dunes itself called the Newport Beach Police and said they will not leave. Would you please have them removed? We understand the curfew. We understand the limitations. We understand the concerns with respect to noise. You heard one comment tonight about concerns with the tent. This does not provide that the tent can remain up throughout the year. This provides that the tent will continue to only be usable for 182 days, I believe it is. Rather, it is the frame that is permitted to stay up as a way of avoiding the difficulty of bringing the frame down through the summer when the tent is not and will not be in use. We understand the concerns. We hope that this council can find its way clear to taking action on this agreement tonight. It's been a long time getting here and a lot of work and a lot of hours both by our team and by your staff. And we respectfully submit that we request that it be approved. Thank you. We're happy to answer any questions.
The Marina Clubhouse issue.
Yes, the Marina Clubhouse is really solely for the marina tenants, and they have to call out our catering and sales office to book that room. So it's really marina tenants, it's dry storage boat tenants. They can use that room up to 60 individuals.
And again, it closes at 10 o'clock at night.
It closes at 10 o'clock, correct.
Do you rent kayaks?
Yes, we do.
Paddle boards?
We do.
And do you provide information that they shouldn't go into Dover shores?
We do have instructions. I'm not sure whether that is in place, and we'll be happy to look at that and make sure that is addressed.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions for?
Yeah, you said this was the city's idea, so it's not something you really want to do. Is that correct?
We have had mixed emotions. There have been several discussions between ourselves and the city as to whether this should be continued and whether we need to do it. There are certain things that, as a balancing act, we have reached consensus on, both for the benefit of the city and for the benefit of the developer, particularly to clarify the transition, the ability to transition restaurant facilities throughout the site, whereas the original agreement put it all in specific buildings. It would be beneficial from our standpoint to have that finalized, and we would like to see it done at this point, but no, we did not initiate it.
Okay, it just seems like it's rather broad. There's just all these different things in it. It seemed like I'm guessing the big thing was dealing with the Back Bay Bistro and that square footage there. It seems, in looking at this, that was really the big issue. Is that correct or not correct?
That was a significant issue from our standpoint, and part of why we when we were asked again to pursue this, we did move forward to pursue it. We believe that the permits that were obtained for the bistro were correct. I know there are some issues on that, particularly with regard to certain elements of it. On the other hand, we understood we had approximately 32,000 square feet of restaurant entitlement on site. Most of that is not being utilized. It would be within the Family Inn or within the former Anthony's parcel. That is one thing that the city has said to us. They want this agreement finalized in order to set aside any issues on that restaurant.
Okay, well, for example, in the agreement, you're saying that you're required to have 185 boat trailer spaces and you're only providing 120. Does the agreement really require you to have 185, or does it say a maximum of 185?
I believe the agreement contemplated that there would be 185 boat trailer
So it
spaces.
specified you had to have 185,
Yes.
exactly.
There as at the ultimate build-out of the site. The issue here is the agreement contemplated an ultimate build-out. The agreement didn't define how long that ultimate build-out would occur over. We've now been, the latest, the amended and restated agreement was done in 1988. Since that time, we've been through 2 major recessions. The ultimate contemplated build-out documented by the 1988 document still has not occurred. The Family Inn has not been built. Anthony's Pier 2 restaurant has not been replaced. And likewise, certain of the counts that were in there were not achieved. The ultimate build-out did contemplate, as I understand it, 185 boat trailer parking. It may be actually 180. I don't recall now. I thought it was 180. And 120 of those have been built. We have found, as a practical matter, we're not using 120. So the thought was, does it make sense to build 180 or 185? There is adequate parking on site for overall uses. Push comes to shove, we can absorb some additional boat trailers in other areas. But that's one of the things that we said, if we're going to amend this, that's one thing we would like to reduce, because it doesn't seem to make sense to build more when you're not using it all.
Any other questions of the quasi-applicant? Thank you. I have a question for, I guess, the city attorney. Mr. Hawkins made the point that, as far as our environmental data, it's stale. It was done a while ago. Now, are we saying that it is insignificant because we're not planning anything different? Or, I mean, how does that work? Because that seems to me to be a relevant fact.
Yes. Actually, when I was an assistant city attorney here years ago, was when they initially started looking at amending the agreement. And at that time, I shared similar concerns that the document's very dated and whether or not additional environmental analysis would be needed. We've thoroughly researched it at that time, and we've basically continued to look at that aspect of it as the project's developed to see what exactly is changing. And just because a document's dated does not mean that you need to do additional environmental analysis unless there's significant changes. So in this case, there wouldn't need to be a subsequent or supplemental to the EIR. It fits squarely within the exemption. So I appreciate Mr. Hawkins' concerns, but that is something that we did look at.
All right. Anybody have any thoughts? Want to do anything?
Well, I guess I do have a question regarding these issues about noise that have been raised. There is a requirement here that the amplified music, be within certain levels, although, I'm not in a position to interpret this. What is the city's role in measuring this noise level and compliance with the agreement associated with that?
Mayor Gardner, I just want to clarify for the record that the settlement agreement does not in any way supersede the city noise ordinance as it relates to any type of activity on the property, just as it would occur anywhere else in the city. We have 2 different types of permit processes for amplified noise. One is through our outdoor, there's a special events permit, which can be applied for more than one event, we allow bundling. So that could be something that the Newport Dunes could come in and anticipate a series of events, and they can get one or a bundle special events permit. And then there's also a permit that is issued through the Finance Department for any type of use of outdoor amplified noise. I know the residents have expressed a concern about the St. James camp that is currently having activities within Newport Dunes. If they are using any type of outdoor amplification, they would need to get that outdoor noise permit. That's not a special event permit, but it's just related to the use of the loudspeaker for voice transmission. So there are two different types of permits that are available to activities on Newport Dunes, and this settlement agreement is not changing that. It is appending to it the Wieland Noise Acoustical Study that talks about some additional things that the Newport Dunes will do in conjunction of using outdoor amplification for music, so in order to minimize the noise impacts. But our noise ordinance and our noise standards still remain in place.
I mean, but you feel that the proposed changes would actually be beneficial in terms of noise impacts?
It should. That was the intent, that these additional measures they will do on a regular basis, but they don't supplant our noise ordinance thresholds.
All right.
Does that answer your question, Councilmember Henn? You're still looking puzzled.
Well, so I guess it was my impression from what was said here is that the noise levels exceed the city's ordinance. At least some residents here are alleging that. This one gentleman that said that it was 70 decibels inside the window of his home with the window closed.
Right.
So how did the residents, get relief on that, or how do they prosecute?
It is our normal
grievances,
code
if you will.
enforcement process where when a resident is being impacted or feels impacted by noise, we do send out code enforcement to take measurements, or the police department is called if it's after hours. But we do have protocol for addressing these type of complaints, and it wouldn't be any different for this property than any other property within the community.
So I take it the net of your comments are that you don't see that there is a change in this agreement, in this settlement agreement associated with noise levels and whatnot. Are you saying that you believe that issue is one that is governed and resolvable through the city's existing ordinances?
That is correct.
Okay.
And did I understand you to say that in addition to that, there was some additional study or process or evaluation going to be undertaken?
That is correct, and that's appended to the proposed amendment to the settlement agreement, which are some standard procedures that the Dunes management is agreeing to do in order to help keep their noise levels at the appropriate level.
Councilman Selich?
Yeah, when I saw the Dunes letter, I originally had a concern over the charter operations, but after being reminded of the limitations of the site and then actually reading the agreement in more detail, where any type of charter operation would have to get a separate marine activities permit, which would include additional conditions or environmental or other analysis as appropriate, it seems like that that aspect of it is pretty well been covered in the agreement already. And as far as the rest of it goes, it seems like it's more of an enforcement issue as opposed to anything to do with the settlement agreement. Well, I'll go ahead and I'll move the action.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Please vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Now what most of you, a great many of you, have been waiting for, Sharrows on Coast Highway.
So I'm going to ask the Public Works Director, Steve Badum, to make this presentation. We do have one of his loyal traffic folks is out today with an illness, but Steve will handle it just fine. We'll give folks a minute to clear the room a little bit.
Gentlemen, can you take that outside, please? Sir.
Mayor and members of council, we're here tonight due to a request from the Citizens Bicycle Safety Committee. They have asked City Council by their letter to consider the installation of sharrows on Pacific Coast Highway through Corona Del Mar, essentially from MacArthur Boulevard to Poppy, as well as trying to move forward with an outreach and education program. First, I thought maybe best to just kind of go over what sharrows really are, because we've heard a lot of questions in the papers, and we see some articles about it. Essentially, the sharrow is a marking that's deployed in the where a bicycle lane cannot be installed because the lane is too narrow. And as you know, in Corona Del Mar, we have rather narrow lanes adjacent to parking, and folks riding their bicycles through those areas have a difficult time. And this sharrow is an approved traffic control device under the California Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. And here's a picture of it. We actually have deployed some of these on Bayside Drive. And the idea is to place that marking on the ground, the bicycle and the arrow, a place where folks can ride. And you notice the distance between that the marking and the vehicle. The idea is so when that car door opens, folks riding bicycles are able to go by safely without getting hit by that door.
What's the spacing of those? What's the ideal spacing every time you have a marker on it?
They're supposed to be 250 feet where they're required. Generally, we like to use them adjacent to the parking areas only. If there are areas where people can keep right, we certainly want to encourage people to keep right. Certainly, you want to be courteous of cars as well.
Well, like you have in the picture there where there's a curve, you shorten the 250 distance when you have a curve that's hiding the next one?
Yeah, I think the maximum distance is 250, and we're able to do it in shorter amounts. In fact, there are places in parking areas that are actually shorter than 250. We typically do one at the beginning and one near the end to kind of indicate the continuance of that sharrow. As you probably are aware, back in May 2010, this whole thing started with a task force, which evolved into a committee, which has done some extensive review of the sharrows, and they certainly want to, they've sent you this letter requesting that you consider it. And I guess the why for the sharrows, and certainly we want to promote the sharing of the roadway between the motorists and the cyclists, and certainly there's a conflict out there with the narrowness of the lanes, and we certainly like to improve the safety. What it does is it allows folks on bikes to kind of ride a little farther out, a little farther away from the possibility of what they call dooring, and it's a pretty nasty accident. Someone in a parked car just puts their door open, not realizing the cyclist is coming by, and there's a rather violent accident that occurs. And certainly the placement of these sharrows could certainly help guide bicyclists away from those parked cars, and also let the motorists know that there is a potential for cyclist activity in that area. But there are some potential issues, although we think we can overcome them with education. One is it can be confusing to the motorists. Sharrows, they're starting to become more common, but they are relatively new to most folks. And in fact, we've heard discussions from people that essentially, like in Long Beach, where they've actually gone a step farther and painted the green lane. There are folks that won't drive their car in that lane because they don't think they're allowed to be in it. So there needs to be some education involved. Also, we've heard comments that this may encourage additional use. However, we see most of this use happening during non-peak hours, mostly recreational riding. So we don't really see a big issue there. But if a lot of folks decide to ride and use the sharrows, there could be an increase in volume of folks out there. And then the other one, which is what we're always concerned about, is sometimes markings on the street create kind of a potential safety issue, a false sense of safety. It's similar to like a crosswalk. Most folks come up to an intersection, there's no painted crosswalk. They really look for cars. But you see quite often, we've all seen it, where there's a painted crosswalk, people just step right out without even looking. So we're hoping that this isn't a problem, and hopefully we can resolve it with education. But we still want to encourage common sense if we go forward with the Sharrow installation. And we want to promote folks to keep right whenever there aren't cars parked. Even though there may be a Sharrow in the area, if there are no cars, it's nice to stay over as right as far as you can to minimize the conflicts with the vehicles. And here's an example of how it might occur in Corona Del Mar. You can see the parking along the curb here. At the beginning of that parking, we would paint a Sharrow, and as I commented to Councilman Sellers, we'd probably do one near the end, even though this may not be a 250-foot spacing. And on the other side of the street, you can see a larger parked area. We would try to do these at the beginning of the block and towards the end of the block. And if this stretch is larger than 250, there would be an intermediate installation as well. And I think the diagram here, although you may not be able to read, it kind of shows that zone of protection where the door is open, and so the Sharrow would be placed just about what we're saying, I guess, about 13 feet out to keep in the lane. Now, unfortunately, this dimension quite often, because we have narrow lanes here, we're showing a 12-foot lane, but there are places where we have an 11-foot lane. So this kind of ends up being almost in the middle of the lane, which is fine, because that's really, if they need to take the whole lane, they need to take the whole lane. And I wanted to point out that by law right now, they do have the right to ride in that lane anyway. All the Sharrow does is really draw attention to the fact that they can be out there, and it's actually helpful to the motorists so they can see that there are folks out in that lane.
On Bayside Drive, you have some signs as well as on the pavement. Are you planning on doing that in Corona Del Mar too?
Yeah, I think we would also supplement it with Share the Road signs. And I think that's really what I had, and hopefully there's some folks here that can chime in and talk about.
I know there's going to be a lot of public comment. I sit on the bike. I don't sit on the bike committee. I run the bike committee meeting. I'm not a voting member, so I've sat through the conversations, and I told the committee at the last meeting that I had a certain ambivalence about this, so they had to come and make their case. My concerns are, and I don't see Frank here. He was here. Oh, okay. I do remember several times he has commented that using the Bayside, that he felt the Sharrows, almost made the drivers more aggressive, that they resented him. And so that's an issue. Is it going to be, does it backfire? Does it just make the driver, just wait, you'll have your chance, make them angrier? And then I just wanted to mention something that City Manager Kiff said, and I want you all to go home and call this up. StreetSmarts, with an S, Marin.com. Whether we do Sharrows or don't do Sharrows, this is a fabulous program that we are definitely going to have to do in the city, and I can't wait for the bike committee to start it. But they've got some great, they do banners, street banners with neat little messages about share the road and that sort of thing. They've been very creative, and I think it's just will be a wonderful way to educate both drivers and cyclists. So I wish that had come up earlier so we could have combined the conversation with it. But do go when you go home, be sure and bring that up. It's great. All right, Councilman Selledge.
Well, just one comment on your comment on Bayside Drive. Is a frequent driver on that street, and I don't resent the bicyclists, by the way. I have no problem with them. But I think the difference in Corona Del Mar is you've got two lanes, where on Bayside Drive you've just got one single lane that's very cramped and you have nowhere else to go. Here people would have another lane to go into, so that might make a difference.
Okay. Any other comments at this point? Councilman Hill?
What's the speed limit on PCH? Is it through there?
35.
I guess I'm kind of curious about Councilman Selledge's, what's your view of your experience with the Sharrows? Do you have any thoughts to offer as respects to how they've been working or not working on Bayside Drive, other than what you just mentioned?
Well, I think like I said, the road is small. It's cramped. I don't think it's a fair test myself. I think it helps out a bit, but I don't think it's a fair test just because of the type of road it is. something like this would be a much more fair test of the idea.
Councilman Hill?
Is there any curvature on this section of the road where a car going 35 miles an hour would come around and suddenly there'd be a bicycle in the middle of the lane?
Well, there's adequate sight distance along this. I mean, yeah, there are curved areas, but there's very adequate sight distance. I don't think that should be an issue.
Okay. How many people think that they're going to speak tonight? Oh, all right. That's not too bad. Begin public comment.
I guess I would have to suggest if you don't feel compelled to use the full 5 minutes, you don't have to.
Good evening, Mayor Gardner and members of the council. I'm Michael Alty. I'm a member of the Bike Safety Committee, and I'd like to address a few issues, including the reason why the Bike Safety Committee recommended churros, some of the misconceptions of the public, and some of the broader issues regarding the balance between the rights of bikers, pedestrians, and motorists. I actually drove here today. I didn't bike here. I've driven to every single Bike Safety Committee that I've attended, and I walk sometimes I kayak, sometimes I paddleboard. It depends. But there's a misconception in the public that members of the Bike Safety Committee are basically biased towards bikers, and that's not the case at all. In fact, we basically try to balance the needs between the motorists and the bikers and the pedestrians, because we ultimately look at the safety and what's really best for the city and best on the whole. I'm thinking of one analogy which I think is helpful in understanding this proposal. As a hiker, I go to the local mountains, and some are multimodal trails used by hikers, bikers, mountain bikers, and horses. And oftentimes in those cases, you see a sign at the beginning of the trail. It's basically a yield sign, and it shows that bikers must yield to equestrians, bikers must also yield to pedestrians, and pedestrians must yield to horses. It's not because horses have greater rights than the bikers or the hikers. It's basically to think of the reality of the situation in terms of how to maximize everyone's safety and how to avoid incidents. Obviously, people have less control over horses than they do over their bike or their own individual being as they're walking on a path, and that's really the logic there. In this case, the basic premise is that bikes have every legal right under the California Vehicle Code to be in those lanes as much as cars do. But there's a misconception of many motorists who believe that they have the rights and bikes don't. When they see bikes in the road, they get mad, they get frustrated, and they think that cars have greater rights than bikes do. But the Public Works Director mentioned already that this is basically to clarify the existing law that bikes have those same rights. And we're here basically to avoid situations. Mark Goodley is here, and he's going to talk about his own accident on Corona Del Mar, and it's going to reinforce for you the need for churros. I also want to mention some of the general plan circulation element policies that are very consistent with this proposal. General plan in the circulation element, there's a policy to incorporate bicycle and pedestrian facilities into design plans for new streets and highways, and where feasible, in the plans for improving existing roads. There's another policy to provide for the safety of bicyclists, equestrians, and pedestrians by adhering to national standards and uniform practices. Here we have the Caltrans California Manual of Traffic Control Devices, which already approve churros. There's another policy in the general plan to minimize conflict points among motorized traffic, pedestrians, and bicycle traffic. And we know that Corona Del Mar is one of the focal points of bike safety or conflicts in the city of Newport Beach. The basic issue here is balance, and we need to balance the rights of motorists, pedestrians, and bicyclists. And we're not trying to give anyone more rights than they're entitled to. We're basically trying to clarify the law and maximize safety conditions for everyone to make this the greatest city it can be. Thank you.
Mayor Gardner, fellow council members, I'm Tony Petros, a member of the Bicycle Safety Committee. I would just remind you briefly that the City Council impaneled the task force in 2009 and then by ordinance created the Bicycle Safety Committee to do one primary task, and that is to evaluate data that's been collected by the police department, by Public Works, and identify areas in the city where it is not necessarily safe to ride a bicycle. That we've done. We've taken the information that was provided by the city in the police department reports, and we've isolated key areas in town where there is an issue. This is that it's indisputable that there are bicycle issues around town. This happens to be one of them, Corona del Mar. And we looked at ways to address that. And we came up with two basic approaches. One is you could conceivably reroute traffic around the Coast Highway area. But practically speaking, that's not going to happen. People are going to ride where they want to get to the shortest distance. The other alternative, therefore, is to rationally apportion the roadway so that it's safe for both of the users, bicyclists and motorists. In this case, we found a perfect example of a device that does not, again, imbue special rights to either party, but just reinforces the current law, and that is the installation of sharrows here. I'd point out that everybody points to 2nd Street and Long Beach as the one shining example of the installation of sharrows. I'd like to make sure you understand that Los Angeles City just installed over 20 miles of new sharrows in that city. I had the occasion to be down in San Diego in Mission Beach on Mission Avenue, which is very similar to the commercial corridor of Corona del Mar, 4-lane divided highway, traffic volumes in the 30 and 40,000 daily trips with the speed of about 35 miles an hour. Very, very similar to this. And they've installed sharrows there. To the success of the sharrow installation, I had the occasion to speak with the bicycle coordinator in San Diego, and they said that they have seen a reduction in incidents, that people are actually, once they are in and there is an active education process, people are actually more civil to one another there. So we have seen examples where sharrows are working and that they are being implemented to the safety of both the cyclists and to bring speeds down in town. I'd then finally like to point out that this is an occasion where they are the proper installation. Councilmember Hill brought up the question of is 35 miles an hour too high a speed or is it a proper speed? In fact, the California Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, you'll hear that document repeated again and again, lays out for us where they are appropriate to be installed. And this is that type of a case. So you have put together a committee that has done its work and come up with solutions. And now it's time to act. And we would just ask you to follow our recommendation and install the sharrows here.
Thank you.
Tony, I have a question for you. Do any of those other examples you cited have the green lane like Long Beach does, or is Long Beach the only one that does that?
The only one that I know of in this area is Long Beach. However, there are examples in Tennessee and other states where they have. I did want to point out one other thing, and I pardon myself. You will hear or have heard, well, darn it, highways are for cars, and those bicyclists, the pesky bicyclists, just get them out of there because it's a highway. Well, I would just remind you that recently the state legislature has kind of turned that on its ear, and now we have the Complete Streets Act, where in fact the city of Newport Beach will have to start looking at the system, the whole entire highway system, to accommodate all users, bicyclists, pedestrians, the aged, trucks, the whole complement of users on our highway system. So it is a multi-use corridor, and it's a heavily used bicycle corridor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council members, Paul Glowinky, Corona Del Mar. I am here for 30 seconds on behalf of the Corona Del Mar Residents Association. I've been a member for 10 years, been a board member for 5 years. In March of 2011, Residents Association saw the presentation by Mr. Petros and also Sean Matzler, and unanimously all 20 directors voted in favor of encouraging you to adopt the Sharrows. So I'd like to put this through Mr. City Manager, brought a copy of our letter that was dated March 1st, 2011, would encourage you to move forward with this project.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Gardner and members of the council. My name is Robert Kahn. I'm a resident of Corona Del Mar. I'm an avid bicycle rider, a member of the Citizens Committee, and also a registered traffic engineer. I'll try to be really brief because Tony and the other speakers have already touched on many of these things. We had substantial discussion of the Sharrows in our committee for several months. I think the primary issues that we looked at was that this particular installation is totally consistent with the manual on uniform traffic control devices. The speeds on the street there are 35 miles an hour. The Sharrows will give an indication to the bicyclists and to the motorists that they are jointly sharing the road in that area, and would encourage safe passage. In this particular area, one of the big accident conditions that have happened is dooring. This will hopefully reduce that type of incident. So again, I strongly encourage the use of the Sharrows and support the committee's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you.
There always has to be one guy, and I'm him. I'm Barry Allen. Before I go to my prepared comments, by the way, I'm not feeling very well because I just had knee surgery, so excuse me if I... So I want you to post signs that say it's not safe to ride bikes through Corona Del Mar along with your Sharrows if you do that, because I want to warn the bicyclists that it's not safe, so that they at least hopefully they'll have one or two signs up there that maybe they can see that says it's not safe, so that when they try and sue you for them, they can't come in and say they didn't see any signs, because make them really big signs, like we did on the Canyon roads where we put up signs saying 16 miles an hour so it would attract people's attention. It was 6 feet tall. How wide is 2nd Street in Long Beach? I don't know how wide it is. I know how wide the number 2 lane is in Corona Del Mar, and it's not wide enough to accommodate a bicyclist staying far enough away from a parked car, plus not being struck by a car who's traveling in the lane next to it. I know some of you drive really big cars. I don't. But measure the width of your vehicle from the outside of the mirrors, which are just about at the level you'll take a bicyclist's head off, and tell me how you're going to drive through there in the number 2 lane. And by the way, I don't know what the traffic is on Corona Del Mar, but we're now in the summertime. Now's a good time to go down there if you want to know what the traffic's like. At 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 3 o'clock. Both lanes in both directions are totally full with cars. The state legislature has passed some laws that are favorable to bicyclists. He's right, they've done a lot of it. So what I'm going to tell you tonight is make the bicyclists go to the state legislature and get you an immunity. I'm going to talk about immunities from Sharrows so you can't get sued. You've got a registered traffic engineer here tonight, so he can tell you that you're not going to get any protection from the fact that it's in the Uniform Code of Manual for signs, because that doesn't give you any protection at all. The only thing that gives you any protection in any kind of a case that's brought against you are signs and symbols that are specifically mentioned in the vehicle code. And the Sharrows isn't mentioned in the vehicle code. And he can tell you that. He can also tell you about testimony by traffic engineers in trials. I'm sure he knows some of them who've testified in trials about the safety of bicycles on roads and how they've done it to public entities. Now my prepared comments. 43 years I've been a lawyer in this county, and 43 years I've been a defense lawyer, representing insurance carriers, public entities, and uninsured corporations. I retired in January 2012. I've defended all types of bicycle cases in my years, hundreds of them, and I've tried several of them over the years. I've tried more cases to civil jury trials to verdict than any active lawyer in this county. And I've tried a lot of cases, and I tried a lot of bicycle cases. And I represented the county for a long time. And the county has one big thing that you don't have for your sharrows. The reason we don't get sued on our bicycle trails is because they're Class 1 bicycle trails. And there's an immunity for them, the trails immunity. And that's in Government Code Section 831.4. So tell these bicyclists who want you to put signs down there in the road that you're going to then hear in the testimony when one of these guys gets hurt and he's a quad or he's a paraplegic or he's lost both his legs. All cases I've defended, by the way, in bicycle cases, exactly those injuries. So that when the bicyclist says, oh, I saw these signs and I felt safe riding along here. I thought that the pedestrian or the cars would yield to me in these areas where these sharrow signs were or these bike lane signs were. They don't yield to you. They're going to hit you. They got a 1530 policy or a 100-300 policy, and you got a quad laying out there. Who do you think they're going to sue? You, the city of Newport Beach, is who's going to get sued because you got big bucks. Now, look, we all know bicycles can get hurt very badly riding bicycles. I don't know whether any of you ride bicycles, but I've seen every kind of injury known to man with people riding bicycles, and the cars have no damage to them at all. I've seen legs off with no damage to cars. I've seen heads off with no damage to cars. Let's face it, cars and bicycles don't mix. But the point is, the law says that they can use the road. And I'm not saying they shouldn't use the road. I'm just saying I don't want to give them any encouragement to use the road where their fellow bicyclists, when they get hurt, are going to end up suing you and me. All you got to do is read the jury sheets and find out how many bicycle cases there are in Southern California. Because can I have a little more time? I won't take much longer.
How much longer?
Well,
you can have 30 seconds.
I'll just sit down then. Obviously, obviously not doing any good, so I might as well sit down.
Barry, I have a question.
Yeah.
Are you aware of any litigation involving sharrows?
I'm not involving sharrows because they've been around for a long enough time. But I can assure you that if somebody is riding in a sharrow and they get hit by a car while they're in that sharrow, and they've got hit by a car that has not adequate money to cover their damages, the public entity who put that sharrow sign up is going to be there. And the traffic engineers are going to be there testifying, saying it's not safe because you didn't put up adequate signage. And if you don't have an immunity from the legislature, all you got to do is go to the legislature and get an immunity for sharrows. Then you can put them up anywhere because then they can't sue you. And these bicycles are loved by the legislature. All they got to do is go up there and ask for it. They'll give it to them. We have an immunity for bicycle trails in the county. I mean, I've had the worst injuries you can believe, and people get nothing when they sue the county. Nothing at all. Haven't received a quarter because we have an immunity. If you don't have an immunity, all it's going to do is take one case, and you're going to be sorry you ever put the sharrows up.
I will say that when we first began to speak of sharrows, we did ask for an opinion from the city attorney's office. That was our previous city attorney, but we did check with that.
Well, the city attorney didn't tell you that you had any immunity, and the city attorney didn't tell you that just because it was in the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices that it was going to give them any kind of protection in any kind of a lawsuit that was brought. That's the problem. I've been defending these cases for years, Mayor, and I'm telling you, if you can't get them dismissed, if you can't get these cases dismissed on a motion for summary judgment because of an immunity, you're going to be going to trial in front of 12 jurors with a badly injured person whose family is going to be there, and you're going to have traffic engineers coming in telling you how your signs weren't adequate.
All right, thank you.
Okay?
Dan Purcell, Corona Del Mar. I just want to speak to process again. I mean, to have him up here and go on well past 5 minutes rant in the back and forth, I just don't think it's appropriate.
Thank you.
Mayor, council, long time. My name is Mark Goodley, Newport Beach. We ride, my wife and I, about 10,000 miles a year. Half to two-thirds of that is along PCH. Generally speaking, there's no problem.
I stand before you as a survivor of a horrible traffic accident last month on the 10th. And a couple tenths here and there would have been a fatality. The accident, from looking at the diagram, could have largely been avoided if the sheriffs had been there. From the point of view of driver awareness, my opinion is that they might be placed in front of the intersections. At the bicycle meeting the last bicycle meeting, the officer testified is probably a poor choice of words, but noted that there was a number of accidents that all happened with left-hand turns, the same as mine. My wife and I were finishing a short shopping trip for bread and cheese and riding what we thought was a leisurely ride back home, and a car came and made a left-hand turn in front of us at a very high rate of speed. We didn't see them. There's some miscommunication whether they saw us or not. Some of the witnesses said that they did. The point being is that we do ride. We're in Long Beach at least 2 or 3 times a month on the way to Queen Mary. It's a normal ride for us. We're on those sharrows on 2nd Street routinely. I have never seen an angry motorist. I've never seen anybody come within half a dozen to a dozen feet of a cyclist. I've never heard a word spoken in anger. I've never seen anything but courtesy from all points of view. We ride a lot in Irvine, where the pain on the street outnumbers our city substantially. And there's no reason that I can see that we can't keep step or shouldn't keep step with the other cities that are making advances to protect all the residents. That's all I have to say. If there's any questions.
Thank you. How many more do we have that wish to speak? All right, we're almost complete.
Good evening.
Go ahead.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. David Huntsman, Newport Beach. And Mr. Baden, thank you for very clearly explaining sharrows. I think that was fantastic. I think there was a lot to say, but I think I'll address just the issue of Bayside, just from a regular driver and cyclist point of view. I normally ride Bayside and don't have too much of a problem, except for when there is only one car behind me, and that car tends to honk and get aggressive. I think what's happening there is that car doesn't have any people around him to kind of call him on it, so he gets aggressive. I've recently discovered Bayside more as a driver, driving my son to junior lifeguards, taking him down to Balboa Island. And what I've discovered is that everybody thinks of Bayside as the shortcut, this is drivers, as the shortcut off of Pacific Coast Highway. So people driving on Bayside tend to drive a lot faster than they would on Pacific Coast Highway. Now, the other problem is the sharrows on Bayside at the very beginning are way over to the right. So it's there, and it tells the cyclist, this is where I should be. It also tells the motorist, that's where that cyclist should be. So, in essence, Bayside really, while it is a good example for you to see, it didn't really help. It's not a really good sharrows experiment. So that's really all I wanted to say about that. But I did want to bring back something relative to something we talked about earlier tonight, which is the Visit Newport Beach comments. We heard that the overseas visitors have increased from 8 to 16%. I'd suggest that you just doubled the amount of visitors that we'll expect to see a cycling-friendly Main Street in Newport Beach. And that's it.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and honorable council members. My name is Brenda Miller. I'm a resident of San Clemente. I'm born and raised in Orange County, grew up in Garden Grove, where there aren't very many bicycle lanes or bicycle facilities. And I've never had an interaction with a motor vehicle in contact. I'm also an instructor with the League of American Bicyclists. I'm here to ask you to approve the installation of sharrows through Corona del Mar along Coast Highway. That roadway, if you don't know already, comprises a segment of the Pacific Coast Bike Route, which connects Canada to Mexico via Washington, Oregon, and the Golden State of California. It is the Interstate 5 for bicyclists, and thousands of whom use the route annually. The safety of all roadway users is a paramount concern. At a time when the state of California has documented collisions and fatalities caused by distracted drivers is increasing by a combined 2% each year from 2004 to 2009, we need to more effectively communicate to motorists the need to be vigilant. Sharrows are an essential, cost-effective communication tool that promote awareness and therefore safety. Drivers' eyes need not leave the roadway to get the Sharrow's message. That message is take care. Be aware of bicyclists in the right-hand lane, out of the deadly door zone, off the sidewalk, and traveling in the same direction as motorists, all while preserving on-street parallel parking that our local businesses deem sacred to their survival. Sharrows are a win-win for everyone, bicyclists, motorists, pedestrians, and shoppers. So please approve Sharrows through Corona Del Mar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brenda. Anyone else?
Honorable Mayor and council members, Sean Matzler. I've been on the bike committee 2 terms and previously was on the task force. Just very briefly, Councilman Selich asked earlier if there were other examples of the green paint. There isn't. Downtown LA and Long Beach are the only 2 that I know of in Southern California. That's not part of the proposal, but when we presented Sharrows to the CDM bid, they expressed support for the green paint, and so maybe if the initial application works out okay, maybe we'll come back to you for some green paint later on. But I'd simply like to say that the cyclists are going to be on PCH with or without Sharrows. The Sharrows make it a little safer, and I'd urge you to approve them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Susan Goodley. The one thing that I'm hearing over and over again tonight is rights. I'm here to talk about safety. I'm not concerned with the rights of a bicyclist versus the rights of a car. As Gary, I believe his name was, addressed, a car will win every time, and I'm very aware of that. What the Sharrows provide is a visual marker cue for motorists. There are bicyclists on the road. It's still my job as a bicyclist to watch out for cars and to follow the rules of the road as well. The Sharrows do provide a margin of safety in that they educate drivers to be aware of the bicyclists. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's the end of public comment. I'll bring it back to council. Do we have a motion?
Well, I would offer, I have some comments, but I would offer a motion to support the Sharrows. Second.
All right. And you had some comments? Go ahead.
Well, just a couple of questions. I share Barry Allen's concern about liability, but, I mean, to Mr. Massler's point, if there's an accident with a bicycle on the street, we're going to be sued whether there's a Sharrow on it or not. I will ask the city attorney, does having a Sharrow create any additional liability over and above what might exist were we to be sued on any accident that would happen today?
You know, I think it actually helps, prevent liability. You have design immunity associated with the things that you put out there. We did take a look at the staff report from a liability perspective, and we think we've basically done what we can do to help limit our liability in this instance. And like you said, you are going to have bikes out there anyways, but, people do seem to sue cities because they think we have deep pockets.
And then, well, everybody knows you can get a ticket for speeding. What's less known is that you can also get a ticket for driving too slow. So if somebody decides he's going to get out with these beach crews and wheel along at 5 miles an hour and hold up traffic, is that bicyclist subject to being cited for driving too slow? I see the deputy chief out there.
Wow.
Hi, David McGill from the police department. I'm not the traffic expert, but I can tell you if they, impede traffic or there's be some vehicle code section that we might want to take a look at for blocking the
Okay.
the thoroughfare. So I'm not the expert in that. I have to get back here.
Most of the bikes I see out there are traveling at plenty fast rate of speed, so I don't think it's going to be a big enough issue, frankly. But the fact of it is that, the bike committee's looked at this for quite a long time. I respect the work that they've done and the experts who have testified today, so I support the sheriffs.
And I would just underline that they're not going on the ground tomorrow. We're going to plan a good information campaign. I think we've got some great ideas from Street Smarts Marin that can help us with that. So they will be, well, if we get the votes, they will be, but not tomorrow. We have education to do so that we don't have culture shock with the motorists.
Well, that was going to be my comment, is I don't know what the Marin thing is, but if there are other things we can do to supplement these to make it safer, 'cause
Well,
that is a congested stretch of
right.
highway.
And the great thing about this is banners. We have the standards in Corona MR where we put up banners. But if we had banners on, just, share the, or whatever, they had a bunch of, but we could move them too. Then we could put them in along Mariners Mile or along Balboa Boulevard or something, any place that we felt like this is a good area to really focus on. So anyway, that's another program, but that could be part of our education program. Any other comments? Councilman Hill.
I, too, support the sheriffs, but I guess I have a question. Is it fact or is it emotion that there are such things as immunity that can be achieved through certain kinds of paths and that type of thing?
Yeah, the government code provides a whole variety of different immunities. I mean, Mr. Allen was correct. There are certain immunities for use of recreational trails and for engaging in certain different types of sports. But, primary immunity that would be applicable here would be a design immunity. And we verified that it's all going to be constructed in accordance with the established guidelines, and then your approval tonight helps establish that. It basically establishes that design immunity defense.
Vote,
so
please.
it's not a motion.
Yeah.
It's factual.
Please vote.
With Councilmember Rosansky voting no, the motion carries.
All right, thank you. And now, item number 17. This is about private improvements.
Yes, Madam Mayor and members of council. What's before you tonight is a request from a homeowner at 1540 Ocean Boulevard on Peninsula Point to install pavers within their right-of-way, within the public right-of-way and the parkway in front of their home. To give you a little bit of background, this particular property got permission in year 2000 to do an encroachment to put grouted bricks within their parkway area. And the parkway area is the area that's defined between the sidewalk and the back of curb on the street in front of the home. And back at that time, that was permitted. In 2002, the City Council enacted policy L18, and the purpose of L18 was to provide kind of a last chance opportunity for runoff to percolate into the ground instead of going into the gutter. And as you can imagine, this is particularly important in a place like Peninsula Point, which is right on the bay. So the idea was to require at least 75% of permeable area in that parkway area, with the exceptions of driveways and carriage walks. This particular property has proposed to have two essentially tree wells, which only represent about 22% of the overall space. So they're deficient in the area they have for permeable area in their parkway. Recently, they had a contractor that removed the pavers with the effort, the idea of removing the trees, and they started their work without benefit of a permit, and they weren't aware of this particular new policy. While they have negotiated with the urban forester to replace the trees, the only sticking point is they would like to install flagstone pavers, which are grouted, throughout the balance of the parkway, which would violate your council policy L18. So the homeowner is requesting a waiver of this policy tonight, although we don't see any real grounds to grant it. And so we're turning to you to
Comments,
ask for direction.
questions for staff?
Yeah. one of my pet peeves.
Uh-oh, I can see we're going to disagree on this one.
Do we follow this policy on all of our medians when we're out there replacing all that bomonite?
This policy didn't apply to the bomonite. However, though, through some of your efforts...
Philosophically, isn't it the same, though?
Well, and I think our new policy is to not put in hardscape. In fact, if you look at the new medians we did in Corona Del Mar, through some of your efforts, I might add, we've eliminated a lot of the hardscape. And in fact, the designs of the future medians that we hope to ultimately build on Coast Highway in West Newport would also not incorporate very much hardscape. So there is some amount of hardscape in the medians that is needed for places so maintenance people can stand and do their work. But other than that, we try to minimize it.
I just want to be clear that this space that we're talking about, it's just parkway. There's no driveway access. There's no crossing of this that creates pressure that, would argue for a more solid base. Is that right?
Yeah, there's no driveway across there. A portion of it could be, I guess, construed as the extension of the sidewalk out to the street, which could be hardscape, but the rebalance of it needs to be somewhat permeable.
And in your opinion, is it possible to adequately install this flagstone without the cement grouting around it? I mean, is there a way to set it in sand or to how?
We have seen it set in sand. We've seen it set in decomposed granite. One of the things that is, I think, critical, and I'm not sure, the thickness of that flagstone. If it's rather thin, it is tough to install in loose material without it moving around considerably. So, not knowing exactly what they're proposing, I didn't look that closely to it. There might be a way to kind of thicken up, essentially add a false bottom to it or double up the stone.
Home Depot sells it netted together.
There you go.
So it's glued on a net, and then you fill it in the net.
There are ways to do it.
Recent experience with that.
I think this is an important policy. I think it's part of our green streets, and I think it's good to maintain this policy. So I will be supporting staff's recommendation to deny the application, but I will not make a motion unless nobody else is making a motion.
Public comment too, potentially.
Yes, but
I'll move the item to support staff's recommendation.
all right, and I'll second that. Public comment? Seeing none, is there further discussion? Please vote.
What was the motion, staff recommendation?
To deny it.
With Councilmember Hill voting no, the motion carries.
All right, and now the professional services agreement, item 18.
So, Madam Mayor and council members, we do have an opportunity to give you a brief staff report. I know it's been a busy night, and it's 10 minutes to 10. This is an important study we're embarking upon. I'll maybe propose a quick staff report and then welcome your comments and questions. This is about a classification and compensation study of all city positions.
Mayor and council members will make this actually very quick. We're proposing a $115,000 contract to Fox Lawson and Associates for the purposes of conducting a compensation and classification study. The impetus behind this is something common both in the private and the public sector to reset your job classifications. We did a little research and we could not find a time when the city of Newport Beach conducted a comprehensive classification study. And based on your compensation philosophy that you've adopted recently, we embarked on looking at a way to meet the requirements of that compensation philosophy. In addition, we've had layoffs, we've reduced the size of our organization, and over the years we've added many, many positions. In fact, we have over 250 classifications for a staff of about 750. Way too many, very difficult to administer. And we have difficulties with internal consistency across departments as we've added these positions. The classification study would provide a systematic way to evaluate the needs of a modern organization, and the methodology that was provided by Mr. Lawson and Fox Lawson
will provide a very, very concrete way to reset our classifications at the city. I'm not going to say much more about it now. We have prepared longer notes, but I think we're going to move right to Mr. Lawson and have him present his proposal.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, I'm Bruce Lawson with Fox Lawson, a division of Gallagher Benefit Services. The proposal that we've provided to the city outlines a comprehensive review of all of the positions within the city, both from a job classification standpoint as well as re-examining the way compensation is delivered, looking at the pay structure, the grades, all of the different elements, and as well as total compensation. The project is designed to run about 6 months in duration and will involve virtually every position within the city. The outcome will end up being a job classification structure that is designed around flexibility for both the city and management and its employees, the opportunity for career growth within the structure, but in a much more straightforward and simplified fashion. Just trying to think of the other key elements. Those are really the main elements, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Will your study also include the competitive nature?
Absolutely.
Competitive analysis?
Yes, the compensation phase will look at both cash compensation and benefits, the whole total compensation side, looking at the market as well as internal alignment.
Okay. Any other questions? Councilman Henn?
And the market will be defined appropriately as to other public agencies or private industry, depending upon the job classification.
That's correct. It's really a series of different markets. There's a very local market for some jobs, a broader market, but both public and private sector, as we understand your compensation philosophy.
And this is a top to bottom. This is department heads all the way, I suppose, city manager all the way down. I don't know, but all right. Well, I will tell you that, having done about a half a dozen of these for large private organizations, this kind of study is absolutely essential to organize and run a large organization efficiently over time. It's just essential. And it's somewhat amazing to me that this has not happened before in the city. And I agree with Dana Smith's comments that in light of all the changes that we've had organizationally and the staff reductions and whatnot, it comes at a critical time. So I'm very supportive of this. I understand that in conjunction with this activity, we'll also be looking at compensation strategy, especially for the higher-end executive positions in the city. Is that correct?
We've already done a portion of that, and my understanding is that from our standpoint, we'll have the work done within the next few weeks and be prepared to present that at the appropriate time.
Yeah, because I think that's an essential element, too, that we need to look at. We need to break out of the old molds here and provide ways to compensate people that are based on performance and goals and goal attainment. And so that'll be important, too. Okay.
Any other questions? Councilman Selich?
Yeah. Does this include all the employees, including public safety?
Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you. Public comment on this item? All right. I'll bring it back. Is there a motion?
I'll move the item.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right. And we move on to item number 19 and our fire hazard.
So Mayor Gardner and council members, this one comes back to you as a proposed ordinance for introduction. I'm going to have...
Madam Mayor, because I lived in an area that was once designated as the fire zone, I'm advised by the city attorney that I need to recuse myself from this issue.
All right.
Now that Mayor Pro Tem Curry is leaving the room, I'll note that. I'm going to have Fire Chief Poster tell us about what's happened since you last saw this.
To start off, Mayor Gardner, council members, Scott Poster, your fire chief.
To start off with, just to reiterate the fact that wildfires have plagued California and the United States for some time, with a tremendous amount of property loss, tremendous amount of cost, and also lives that have been lost in the process of combating wildfires. The very high hazard fire severity zone is being brought forward to you for Newport Beach as a local responsibility area to prevent the catastrophic conflagration fires that would damage property, cause property loss, life loss in Newport Beach. On March 13th, during a study session, we did approach council and stated a redesign of a painted map that CAL FIRE had delivered to Newport Beach. We took specific criteria and findings to look at the perimeter of the map that CAL FIRE introduced to you and reduced it to some degree, nearly 50%. Our specific findings of the CAL FIRE map that was delivered to us basically took terrain, wind, topography, a time of year, fuel loading, fuel types, and wind as it comes through the 73 quarter down towards Catalina Island into consideration to recommend a reduction in the zone. So that what we are asking for you here tonight to approve is the Newport Beach local responsibility area, very high hazard fire severity zone, which is on this map. The map board in front of you basically has two colors. The green color is the proposal for the Newport Beach local responsibility area, high hazard fire, very high hazard fire severity zone, whereas the pink area is the area that's been reduced and eliminated from the recommendations from CAL FIRE. So if we do approve this map tonight, the green zone, we can switch the map now, the green zone will be sent to the state of California as Newport Beach's very high hazard fire severity zone, which is appropriate and mostly entails Newport coast area and some very high probability areas for fire spread throughout Newport Beach. Noting that it's not going to eliminate all fire, this zone is designed to prevent a conflagration, the home-to-home spread of fires, a wind-driven fire. So we feel very confidently with the research we've done that this is appropriate for Newport Beach, and we're asking for this first reading tonight to be brought forth. And I'm ready for any questions you may have.
The changes, there weren't too many because, as far as requirements from homeowners, because most of them were already in an area. Is that correct?
Mayor Gardner, that is correct. The areas that are within this the green zone are our local responsibility area, high hazard zone, is Newport Coast. Newport Coast primarily, those areas have already been identified by the insurance underwriters as being in a very high hazard zone already. And that, as a matter of fact, as we pulled up tract maps and deeds for various properties within that area, that is already part of the zone. Some of the components of being in the high hazard zone is the requirement of having increased building constructions for fire resistiveness, to have a disclosure on your property that it is in a high hazard zone, and these properties are already disclosed, and also to have some fuel mitigation, so we have 100 feet, up to 100 feet of fuel mitigation or land clearing that is on the perimeter of these areas for moving wildfires throughout. So yes, you are correct. These areas have been identified already.
All right. Thank you. And I know you've done a lot of outreach. You've met with a number of community associations and during the last couple of months.
Yes, Mayor Gardner, that's true. Since March 13th, we have been on a campaign. We've met with everybody who has asked us to meet with them, both privately and with homeowner associations throughout Newport Beach, yes.
Oh, good. Any questions for the Chief? All right, thank you. I'll open this for public comment.
Robert Hawkins, I represent clients within the city of Newport Beach. We have submitted written comments to you in connection with the environmental determination. First of all, we do believe that Chief Poster has done an excellent job of narrowing the fire hazard zone. But the environmental determination is way, way off. In essence, and our correspondence goes through this, but in essence, the concern is when you provide the justification for the red, excluding the red areas, that will have an environmental impact to those areas. Now, it may be a beneficial impact, but no one has analyzed that. As a matter of fact, what staff has maintained is that this determination, carving out those fairly extensive areas of red from our fire map, is exempt. We don't have to study it. Well, I suggest that you do. I think that probably the appropriate course of action is to do some sort of environmental analysis. Maybe it's a negative declaration or a mitigated negative declaration. But I think you need to do that to make that determination. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It seems to me in the beginning, I thought that was why we were waiting for this, because it said we didn't have to do that.
No, the reason we brought this back is they need to make certain findings in order to reduce the size of the zone. When the state comes out with the proposed area, local agencies are allowed to reduce the size of the zone to the extent they make certain findings related to supporting the reduction. In regards to the environmental issues, I think the staff report does a good job of laying out the reasons why this is exempt from CEQA, but just fundamentally, you're basically applying less regulation to certain areas. So how could that possibly have, a negative impact? You're not doing anything to those areas.
Right.
So.
All right. Fine. Other public comment? Is there a motion?
Move the item. Second.
Please vote.
Prior to reading the vote, I'll read the title for ordinance 2012-15, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach adding section 9.04.140 to the Newport Beach Municipal Code to adopt the very high fire hazard severity zone map. The motion carries unanimously with Mayor Pro Tem Curry recusing himself.
All right. Thank you. And now the final item on our very long agenda, the charter update report.
So, Mayor Gardner and council members, we did have a presentation about this at study session. I'm going to rely again on Michael and Rob to focus on areas which you've identified that you might want to talk about further and have some make some further decisions on. So, I believe we have that list. I guess let's go ahead and just go through them, unless there are any objections from the council.
So
we also do have, potentially for the folks that weren't listening to this at the study session, Chairman Watkins is here. He could potentially revisit some of the committee's process to this at this point. But given the lateness of the hour, what would you prefer?
I think that if we could just go through this and we can take public comment.
Okay.
Okay, well, before you, from the study session, you were able to give some direction as to which areas you wanted to review in more depth, and so those areas are shown on the highlighted in order on the PowerPoint here, but also you would have copies. So what I've done is made a copy of Section 402 A and B, the red line version. I've also got 404. And then I've got a larger print version of the actual highlighted section change. So depending on what you want to look at in detail, if you just want to discuss it, it's all on the screen.
Yes. Is there any conversation, any comments that the council has on this number?
I just want to make sure that it's clearly understood that this is not in any way increasing compensation from its current levels. It's simply making it clear to the public what that compensation is, because it's frankly undecipherable in the current city charter language.
That's correct, Mayor Pro Tem Curry. What we've done is we've taken the numbers from the current charter section, adjusted for CPI as it's currently allowed, and then just put them into this new section that's consolidated, Section 402A, 402B, and 404 for ease of use. But the numbers are exactly the same. There is no increase at all.
All right.
And just to be clear, going forward, the increase in the amount, the $12.27.35 per month, will track CPI, not to be not to exceed 5%, as is already stated in the charter. So there's no change to the actual potential change down, in the future.
That is correct, Councilmember Rosansky. So it's what it currently says. It's by CPI or 5%, whichever is less.
All right. I'd like to ask council right now, do you want to go you want to take these items, take public comment and vote on them? Or do you want to take them all and then come back and vote on them and have public comment all at one time?
Let's have public comment all at one time. Just
All right.
do this. I think
Okay.
most of these we're going to have perfunctory comments.
All right, so are there any comments on this item? All right, the next one?
That pertained to Section 407, regular meetings, with the key provision of changing from 2 meetings per month to 2 meetings per month, except for August and December. The language changes before you.
I thought that Mr. Hendrickson had an interesting comment that by saying at such times as it shall fix, does that perhaps bring some ambiguity to
I
it?
think Mr. Hendrickson's point was that time here implies hour.
Right.
Like
And so
the
should
time
we
of 3
use-
o'clock.
should
When
we
I
use
read this,
hour?
I never
thought.
I thought time was more broader than that. That it was on the fourth Tuesday in the evening. That would be the time versus always at 7 o'clock or always at 6 o'clock.
okay.
But I'll let Aaron or Michael weigh in.
No, I think we agree with that.
Oh, okay. All right. Any other comments on that? Councilman Rosansky?
Oh, I'm sorry. No.
Okay. Proceeding.
The next section is 708, Board of Library Trustees' Powers and Duties. We had a lot of discussion on that. The red line's before you, and then I have a larger print version if we want to go into any specific parts of it.
No, I would just say that I think, given the comments and the angst on this, that it would be my recommendation that we simply override the committee in this case and stay with the existing language. That would be my suggestion, but I'm open to conversation on that.
Well, I'll chime in here. This was probably created the most spirited discussion out of all the committee members as well as the public. And clearly, libraries have a soft spot in all of our hearts. And I, too, am a little ambivalent about fiddling with the library. I mean, it is a successful library, as pointed out, I think, at our study session. It's beloved by our residents, a very, very high level of satisfaction with that. Although, the city has changed in 50 years, and the library has changed in 50 years, and I guess, and I mentioned this at the committee when we talked about it, is that I think historically we've looked at libraries as the repository of information and the place to go to get information, and in order to make informed decisions, we want to have all the information, not just some of the information, or information that someone thinks is important and other people think is not important. Because there was really no other place to get information, at least on a local level or by an individual. And I think in 50 or 60 years since this charter has been adopted, that's changed, clearly. I have, this is my library. I have the entire Newport Beach Library virtually right in my fingertips. So I don't have to rely on, a book being in the library to get this book. I can go on Amazon.com and get whatever book I want, probably a lot more books than I could ever find in the library, or information for that matter. So I don't know that the library has that status any longer. And to the extent that it is out of step with the rest of our city and our city manager form of government and how we run our other departments, I mean, you can make similar arguments about influencing and, choices of a department head for other departments here, too, and other things that we do in this city. And so, depending on the political whims, I mean, I see it in other cities, where they're doing things that, the political wind is blowing one way, so they're doing certain things that way. So it's not just limited to libraries. It's limited. It applies to virtually every department head, I think. So I guess I would back the recommendations of the committee. However, I am pragmatic, and I do understand that this is a controversial proposition. And so I guess I would propose that we consider, at least discuss, making it a separate ballot initiative if we truly want to go there, because I'd hate to create this as a lightning rod in the community where it would torpedo the whole entire update because of passions that surround this issue. It has been an issue that's been on the ballot before, and it hasn't been approved in other forms. So there is some controversy associated with it. And I would hope that we could keep at least the non-controversial portions of this charter update separate from the one or two that are controversial. So that would be my opinion.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Curry?
Well, this is a case where I think the Charter Committee got it exactly right, but I think we want to think about whether we want to put this in or not. To suggest that having the city manager supervise the head of the library is somehow political, whereas supervising the chief of police or the public works director or any of the other department heads is not, is disingenuous. Orange County today dismissed a department head for failure to supervise a subordinate. Those are the reasons why the city manager needs to have control over his department heads, because we put $7 million of tax money into that department as we do the other departments. So the fact that somebody can become a favored member of the Board of Trustees and somehow be insulated from the responsibilities of management is frankly not a good practice. On the other hand, we have several elements of this charter that need to be passed, and so I think, Mayor Gardner, I think you have suggested a good idea that maybe we just deal with this at another time and move forward.
Councilman Selich?
Yeah, well, I think, Councilman Rosansky, you're right, and some of the things you were pointing out, and Councilman Curry, you too. I think the committee did get it right, but I'm not sure the community's quite there yet. And so I think that I would be pretty much in favor of leaving it as it is. I have no doubt that at some date in the future it's going to change, but I think sometimes it's just a matter of timing, and I don't think the time's right.
Councilman Henn?
Well, I spent the better part of a 30-year career being concerned with management structures and efficient organizations and so forth, and I too agree that the committee got it right from that perspective. There's little doubt in my mind about that. I also am the beneficiary, or perhaps the victim, of a recent attempt to make a change in our library system, and the result was unmistakable and passionate and powerful, and so I agree with Councilmember Selich that despite the logic of the situation, I don't think the community is really of a mind at this point to be swayed by arguments like that. And there's still that don't mess with the library attitude out there that is just going to be hard to overcome, even if we were to put this on a ballot. So I'm in the same boat as Councilmember Selich.
All right. Councilman Hill?
Well, I would just say that I think the committee got it right, and I'm going to stick with the committee. I think that if you look at what has just happened in the county, if we had that kind of incident and had no ability to do anything about it with respect to the library, we would not be in a good position. And I think that the concept, what I'll parallel with academic freedom, has kind of gone to the wayside with the Internet. I don't know how anybody is blocked from any kind of knowledge or access to anything with the Internet today. I will give you that it is an emotional item. I stood by and watched what happened in Central Balboa, and over what I thought was a very, very positive step forward, of which I think even our senior library staff thought was a very positive step forward. And everyone was kind of bloodied on that. But I'm only one of vote, and I've learned to count since I've been on the council, and so I recognize that I'm just going to protest in vain.
All right. Let's move on.
Well, I would make one other comment. You know, we do have a board of library trustees, who I think generally are capable, thoughtful people, and so I'll just be trusting in the fact that when a decision needs to be made of a nature like you were pointing out with the county, that's a group that's going to be able to make the right decision.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Next.
This was Section 709, Parks, Beach, Recreation Commission Powers and Duties. The main provision was the consideration of annual budget was recommended to be removed from that duties.
I wanted to offer some thoughts before you talked about this further, and I expressed in study session what Mr. Lugar suggested, that he does think it's important to see the budget, and I do too. I kind of call this in our state constitution we have a ban on gill nets, and I think that was a nice idea, but I think everybody said, well, why is it in the state constitution? Why wasn't it adopted a different way? There's no reason why I couldn't, or whoever city manager couldn't or shouldn't bring the parks budget before the Parks, Beaches, and Recreation Commission. I guess when we looked at this as staff, we were wondering, should it really be a charter directive, this specific? And that was the thinking, at least in proposing this to you. I certainly didn't want to cut them out of that because they have valuable input, but it just didn't seem like something that was meaningful in the charter. But just an opinion.
All right. Any comments, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I agree with Dave. I guess it does. It doesn't need to be in the budget. The budget review doesn't need to be in the charter, but if Dave's going to bring in the budget anyway, then you might as well just leave it in the charter and just leave it the way it is, if that's the case.
All right. Any other comments? Okay. Moving on.
Section 1114, Claims and Demands. Michael?
This section came from a recent case out of the city of Los Angeles involving a challenge to the utility user tax. And from that case, the city of Los Angeles was held liable for a class action claim, and the court had opined that potentially if there was something out there that prohibited a class action claim, some type of statute or something else in their charter, then maybe that would not have been allowed to proceed. And so from there, it's been recommended that cities adopt a prohibition on class action claims involving fees and taxes, and that's what we've done here.
This was, I think, Councilmember Zansky brought this up. We got considerable discussion on this because there were a few committee members, or at least one, who wondered if this was not in some way curtailing a citizen's right, that the citizen would bring a class action or something. And I think the committee as a whole decided that they thought this was a good protection for the city.
That's correct, Mayor Gardner. And this would still allow individual claims against the city, but what we're trying to prevent is the idea of maybe, not to disparage my own profession, but maybe an attorney out there trying to gather a class to sue the city to maybe take a small issue and make it bigger than it is.
All right. Any comments on this? All right. Okay.
Again, I'll just put a little background here. There was a spirited discussion here, and unfortunately, Suzanne Savory is not here tonight to defend her position on it. I think she felt that as a member of the public, looking at this, that reduced the public's rights somehow because you've lost one of your tools to object to something that the city might be doing or to recompense yourself for fees or taxes or whatever. And so there was a fairly lively discussion about whether it was good or bad for the residents, good or bad for the city. Ultimately, the committee decided this way.
Go ahead.
The last item that we had for specific review was the concept of a prohibition on automatic traffic enforcement systems or red light cameras. And either Michael or Aaron.
Let me speak to that because I suggested this. As most of you know, I get an opportunity to, as with the Association of Cities and League of Cities and with just the work I used to do, to travel around and see what other cities are doing. And a lot of cities have begun to adopt this kind of prohibition. Anaheim has done it. It went to the voters and passed overwhelmingly. These red light cameras have a very sketchy enforcement history. They are typically put in by private sector vendors who take a piece of the action. It becomes a racket. I think it really breaks down the trust between the citizens and their community. And in most cases, you see examples where all of the tickets get tossed en masse because of a technical problem. It creates a significant amount of administrative hassle for the city. So I think it would be appropriate for us to consider, and we don't use them now, some of our neighbors use them, I don't think they've had satisfactory results, frankly, to write this into our charter to give our citizens a protection against this kind of an abuse of technological overkill. I think the language that's been proposed here probably needs to be tweeted. It picks up more than red light cameras when it talks about automated traffic enforcement, and that may have implications for the toll road. So, I don't have a problem in catching people who don't pay their tolls on the toll road using electronic means. But I think red light cameras are something that have no place in Newport Beach, and I think this is a way to establish fidelity with the public that we're not going to use them here.
Any comments on that? Councilman Rosansky.
Yeah, I would support Councilman Curry's suggestion here. My only question that I would ask the city attorney, just so we don't kind of get ourselves in trouble here, are there any issues with Brown Act or the fact that this was not part of the staff report before and we're adding it now? I understand, I'm trying to look at the heading here and the description of what we're supposed to be discussing, and are you comfortable that this is included within that scope?
No, I'm comfortable this is within the scope of what we're here to discuss under the Brown Act. I do think that we got to address the concern regarding the toll roads. The vehicle code does define that in vehicle code section 611, so we can add to the definition an exception for the toll roads and toll highways.
All right, any other comments? All right, we're going to have public comment. Public comment, if there's an item that we didn't discuss tonight but is on the list of changes, you're certainly welcome to mention those.
Mayor Gardner, members of the council, Paul Watkins, I was honored to serve as chair, and I just wanted to pass along a couple of thoughts for the good of the order. One is, at this late hour, we still have 6 out of the 7 members of the committee here observing and giving input. And, Jeff and Dan and Paul and Joe and David all here, and we're here this afternoon at 4 o'clock. As is Ronnie, who, by the way, always says, you got it wrong, not you got it right, to me. So, understand that. This was a real learning experience for me. I mean, one of the things I learned, for example, was that if Steve Rosansky calls you and he says it's going to be like an hour, hour and a half for 5 or 6 weeks, it's not going to be an hour, hour and a half for 5 or 6 weeks.
We tell the same thing to the volunteers at our Boy Scout troop.
Yeah, that I learned. I also learned from this experience that people read the minutes and they change them and they modify them. And I mean, every group that I've ever been a member of never reads the minutes, so that is really cool. I learned one thing from sitting in a hotel room, as was mentioned in the study session, for a couple hours on the phone on May 24th. I was with a bunch of lawyers, so that wasn't so good. But I mean, actually, it was a welcome relief from that group being on the phone, listening for a couple of hours. Except Verizon sent me a bill for $140. So all things taken, that's okay. So we have a very committed group. Again, for the good of the order, I wanted to especially thank all the staff, Leilani at the head of the class. I would write her emails on a weekend with comments on minutes or whatever it was, and she'd get back to me in about half an hour. I mean, it's just amazing. She really did a great job, and I think I've already mentioned Dave and Aaron and Michael and Taryn, Tracy and others. Dan was very helpful, and as was Rob. Our process, as I mentioned, I think a little bit earlier, did involve a lot of public input. The public was offered the opportunity to speak 4 times. One of those 4 times, they were able to speak beyond just the one time, on individual sections or on batches of sections. So on agenda items, on minutes, on non-agenda items, and then on the charter sections themselves. And by the way, the staff was spectacular in offering us anything that we wanted. And I think I listed those things at study session. So I'm here to answer any questions. I think you've distilled the items down to those that are most controversial, and it sounds to me like you've dealt with them very expertly. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have and may ask for me.
Any questions for Paul? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Public comment? Now, one thing I will say, a good salesman knows when he's made his sale.
Good evening, Mayor. Yes, I do. Thank you very much, and council members. I just wanted to say that based upon what I would call a straw poll, I guess I'm happy to say that, when I had a significant other, sometimes I've learned that it doesn't matter how it's said as long as we get to the right result. So, if she told me, honey, you're completely wrong, and I will never agree with you, but we can do it this way, then, I could live with that, okay? So if the committee got it right, and the library should serve out the pleasure, library board and librarians should serve out the pleasure of elected politicians, but because due to the wisdom of our council members, they are responsive to the residents' opinions and feelings, and it wasn't only the Balboa branch, but it was also at the Corona Del Mar branch. There was going to be a change over there, and I think all of the residents...
That was much different, George. That was the Corona Del Mar branch.
Oh, of course it was different, but apparently they didn't want too many changes. So I guess at this point in time, okay, I just don't want to go on too much, okay? So I will say, to address the concerns about if we had a ineffective city library services director, the next article in the city charter says that the 5 trustees shall be subject to removal by a motion of the city council by at least 4 affirmative votes. At any point in time, this council could fire all 5 trustees, and at the next council meeting, appoint 5 brand new trustees. That would do exactly what you wanted them to do. Of course, it would take a couple of council meetings, which would give the residents time to come in and let you know what they think about that. So if it was for a good reason, I would be here to support you. Thank you.
I'm Elizabeth Starr, and I'm just here to say that please don't change the language about the library trustees. I've been working with the librarians, the trustees, and the city council and the city manager now since 1989, and the system works very well the way it is. No way has any kind of one person selected the librarian. It has always been a cooperative thing. I've watched good boards of trustees, and I've watched weak boards of trustees. I've watched different city managers, and I've watched different city council people deal with the library. We are number 1 in the state. We are adding 17,000 square feet because the amount of usage that we have in this library, it is filled all the time. And we're very proud of that. We are a public library, and we are the most used library in Orange County, and we need to keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan Purcell, Corona Del Mar. I want to speak on the library. Again, I think that it is broken, and I agree with Rosansky. It's times have changed. I agree with everyone, and I wish you would just have the fortitude, as you have with other issues like addressing harbor fees and this and that, and have the fortitude on this one to also go forward and address it. You do it as a separate item. It sounds as though you've chosen not to do that. I've been a critic of the Board of Trustees, the way the meetings are run. I'd like to see them run better at the very least. They still, to record the meetings, they're not very open meetings, first and foremost. You really don't get to comment. They use an old tape recorder to record the meetings with a cassette tape. I don't know how they transfer that to anyone if you need. We're supposed to be allowed to be able to review those. The chairperson has never downloaded an e-book. Now, I don't expect her to download an e-book and read it, but she ought to at least have downloaded an e-book. I mean, Councilmember Rosansky says he's he's got the whole library on his phone. Well, I don't know that the chairperson's even aware of that. So anyway, on the class action lawsuits, I brought that up. I felt like it wasn't adequately addressed. I know there was another case that wasn't brought up here in Los Angeles where it was an ADA case where the city of Los Angeles was not doing all the curbs and allowing access for all the handicapped people. So that all the handicapped people got together and they did a class action lawsuit, and none of them collected any money. What the city of Los Angeles was required to do was put money aside to fix the things they weren't fixing. If the city does things in the right way, you're not going to have a problem, but you might have another issue with pedestrians or something where they feel like, I am a pedestrian, I have a right to be able to get around, moms with strollers or something. I mean, those are the sorts of things that I felt like, it wasn't adequately addressed what was happening. The PB&R stuff, Parks, Beach, and Recreation, I don't know any reason to remove it. Maybe it shouldn't be in the charter, but it's good for them to review that. It gives you an idea of really what is going on in the city, and I would like to see the PBR be on that. The 2 council meetings a month, I prefer not to see you change it. I know one of the options was to only have 1 meeting a month, and that's going the wrong direction. That's like a bell direction. People made the case we need public. We need to come out and be able to, every couple of weeks, if we need to, rattle the cages and make some comments, especially in December. The 1 meeting that you have is pretty much ceremonial, and so if you got that, and then you have nothing else in December, and then we're into January. And in this last year, I was screaming and throwing a fit because the city staff was processing a lot of stuff at the end of the year with the coronavirus entryway and all this stuff, and there was no public forum to be able to get in and complain about it, but whatever. And then I'm concerned. I'm with Councilman Curry on the red light camera thing. I'm with you, but I'm concerned it could be a ploy to garner support for this charter thing, to get voter support. But maybe it will work. I don't know.
Thank you.
Mayor Gardner and members of the council, my name is Jim Mosher. Many of you probably have the impression that I think our current charter is perfect. I do not think it's at all perfect, and I think there's many things that could be added to it in addition to red light ordinances. One thing that's notably lacking is any clear direction from the voters as to how the charter can be or should be amended. There's a detail in it, which you went by here so quickly that there is no comment, Section 418, about when you are amending municipal codes, whether you can amend an entire section at a time or a subsection. We have no similar direction on the city charter, and I frankly don't know how it works without that direction. 2 years ago, Section 402B about your stipend was on the ballot, and you're all admiring the numbers that are in there today. The number that was in there was the 1980 number. When we approved that or adopted, I don't know if we were setting your stipend back to the 1980 value of $441 a month, or if we were only changing the little part that was a red line, which was changing a he from a he or she. I have many other comments. I have to apologize. I usually put things in writing, but if I was to write all my comments about the charter, it would be a book too thick for you to be interested in reading. So I'll just go through here until the red light lights up. Section 103 and 105, the only explanation of why these are being deleted is we're saving trees. They're obsolete. If you look in the rest of the charter, which I'm not sure is before you tonight, we have a section 1402A, B, C, D, E, F, that in great detail are describing properties that were sold at one time with voter approval. I don't know why we're not bothering to save those trees if we have to save these. Section 402 about your stipend, again, you've been admiring the numbers. Never have the voters adopted anything other than the compensation for the mayor being 50% of the compensation, an additional 50% over what the other council members get. Yet the proposal for you today has this number you're admiring that's some weird ratio that staff has come up with. I don't know how they came up with that. And I also think you're skirting the real issue about compensation, which not is what your stipend is, but whether that is a reimbursement for expenses, which does not entitle you to the employment benefits that you're currently getting, and I think has never done that, or whether it is a salary. And this is a big change. You're changing that from reimbursement to salary. Section 409, as I pointed out to you before your closed session, says all sessions of the City Council, all meetings shall be open to the public. We're replacing that just with something that says the location will be noticed according to the Brown Act, or it will be at locations. And it no longer says anything about how open the meetings will be. Section 410 about the quorum. This used to contain a requirement for the clerk to record in the minutes the roll call vote every time an ordinance or resolution is adopted. For reasons totally unknown to me, that committee struck that out with no explanation. The clerk is very good about always recording the roll call on all votes, not even ordinances and resolutions. Why we don't want that anymore is beyond me. Section 412 now allows ordinances to be adopted at special meetings. I have no idea why we're doing that. Section 421 is a huge change in contracting, and it's allowing people other than the City Council to be designated to approve contracts outside of the budget process or anything else. And it contains language, if you look at it, there's something about who can be designated to sign a contract. It now says such other officer as shall be designated by the City Council, City Clerk, and City Attorney. And the committee itself had no idea what that meant. They asked for clarification. Mr. Torres told them, don't worry what it says, we know what it means. It's not quite what it says. And yet that's going on the ballot, just like that. Section 425 is about what is supposed to be at the City Hall site. I don't necessarily have any problem with that, but we are rewriting a ballot measure that was adopted by the voters of Newport Beach just 4 years ago in 2008, and I think we at least should let people know, hey, you're going to be approving something different than you voted for in 2008. Section 507 is about something called the City Manager Pro Tem. As I pointed out to the committee, the city manager has great power, actually more day-to-day power than you as the council have. And we have apparently for the last 20 years not known that we were supposed to have somebody called a city manager pro tem who is authorized to fill in and exercise those duties when the city manager cannot do so. And we've eliminated that. And I have another half a page. I can't tell you what they are, but the rest of it is equally bad. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Thank you, Robert Hawkins. I'm a resident of the city of Newport Beach. I am opposed to the charter update. There's been no justification or reason why we are amending the Constitution of the city only a mere 2 years after we've already done it once. I agree with some of the comments that have indicated that this has been done with little thought. Mr. Torres is talking about claims and so forth, and we're not prohibiting residents making claims. Well, in fact, the class action issue will prohibit taxpayers, residents of the city from joining together in a class issue. I'm not sure that even would be that this charter section will be upheld. But let's go to one that is sort of interesting, and we need to compare it or put it together with another section. So the two sections I'm talking about are Section 421, Contracts, Execution, and then the new definitions section. Okay, so we're broadening out in 421 who can sign a contract and approve the contract. Okay, and that is, or employee designated by the city council and signed on behalf of the city by the mayor, strike the city clerk, or by such other employee as designated by the city council, city clerk, or the city attorney. So that's a broad delegation.
It says and the city attorney, not or.
Okay. And then if we go to 1400, we have a definition for the city and public employees and so forth. Whenever a power is granted to or a duty is imposed upon a public officer or employee, the power may be exercised or the duty may be performed by a deputy of such officer or employee, or by a person otherwise authorized pursuant to law or ordinance. So this expands the expansion in 421 immeasurably. I'm not sure where that limitation is going to be. Who is going to be signing these contracts and approving these contracts? So I think the committee did a good job in a very short period of time. I do not believe there is any justification to update, amend this charter at all, and I hope that you take a look at 421 and 1400. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there other public comment? Mr. City Attorney, did you have any comment on either one of you? Yeah, I know, but hold on. In response to that, is there a conflict? Are we... His comments about 1401, that we are expanding it greatly.
I think what it really does here is already that it already has the authority for basically the delegation of authority down. It really clarifies, what's already in the charter already.
So if the mayor's not here, the mayor pro tem can sign the contract.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Good evening, Council. My name is Rhonda Brown-Watkins, and I'd like to speak to the public comment that was made previously regarding the amount of time and reflection that was expended on the content of these meetings and the committee's task at hand. I can personally attest to the chair's diligence and time commitment to this task, and the other council members, members of the committee. In addition, as a member of the public, I attended all the meetings with the exception of one, the first meeting, and I was impressed by the depth and breadth of knowledge that the committee participants exhibited at these meetings. They put in considerably more time than the meetings themselves took, considerably. We're fortunate, I think, as residents of this great city, and I really do think it's great. I've lived all over the country, to have such selfless, intelligent individuals both on this committee and on staff. And I just think they should all be commended for their service.
All right, and I know there were no bias in those comments. All right, is there any other public comment? All right, then, from what I think, and you can contradict me if I'm wrong, that the council, a motion would be to approve what the committee sent to us, with the exception of 708, which would remain as it is in the current charter, and in 709, which would retain item B, which is the budget, and with the addition of the red light cameras with a clarification for the toll roads. Now, is that a reflection of what we have discussed?
I would so move.
Well, I've got a comment on the red light cameras. I don't think we've really talked about that.
Okay.
I'm really not in favor of it. I don't like red light cameras. I'd never vote for them. It just doesn't seem to me to be good government to put it in a charter that we're going to, prohibit red light cameras. As bad as they are now, there may be new technology in the future that make them acceptable, and would just be tying the hands of future councils to deal with it. And it just doesn't seem a subject to put in a charter. So I might be like Councilman Hill on the libraries in the short end of this one, but I would not be in support of it.
Okay, I had a comment on Section 709. I don't see any reason why we need to change the recommendation from the Charter Committee. The city manager, I think it is a good idea for the city manager to seek advice from the Parks, Beaches, and Recreation Committee on the budget, and he can choose to do that. I see no reason why that has to be mandated in the charter. And it's a significant difference. So I'm happy with the committee's recommendation on number 709.
Plan B. How about a motion to approve everything that the committee moved forward, but we will pull out sections 708, 709, and the red light cameras for separate discussion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, please vote on that. Now.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right, now, do we have a motion before, so we can begin our discussion on 708, which is the library?
I would move we delete 708 from the proposed charter amendments.
And it will remain the same. We won't just...
Right, exactly.
yeah,
Status
not-
quo, taking it out of the...
Status quo, okay. And there's a second. Is there discussion on that? No? All right, well, let's vote on that, please.
With Councilmember Hill voting no, the motion carries 5-1.
All right. And then on 709, it is, do we keep in B, consider the annual budget for parks, beaches, recreation, park, and make recommendations to the city council and the city manager. The committee advised taking that out. We've heard comments on both sides tonight. The chair of the PB&R says he thinks it should stay in. Do I have a motion?
I'll move that we adopt the committee's recommendation on Section 709.
Second.
All right. Please vote on that. Okay.
Motion carries unanimously.
All right. And now on the red light cameras.
I would move that we adopt a prohibition against the use of red light cameras to be put in the charter with the appropriate language as modified by the city attorney.
And that motion, I assume, would include the exemption for TCA.
Correct. That was the
right.
modification of top hat.
Well, I thought that Councilman Selich made a good comment that there might be reasons in the future why we might want them. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I would simply say that if that were the case, that, the residents could always vote to take it out of the city charter, as it would come back in a package of amendments, just like we're doing here, to the extent that that technology exists. But I think we're being speculative about what technology that might be, number one. And number two, I think, you put this in the charter because you don't know what the next city council is going to do, whether they're going to get, rolled over by a vendor who, promises pie in the sky to put these things up. I mean, that's what's happened in other communities, and that's why these things have been put up in the face of popular opposition, and why they've had so many problems with them in terms of their implementation, their utilization, and their operations. So that's why I think we show, fidelity to the community and our resolve on this issue by putting this in the charter where I think it's appropriate to go.
All right. Any other comments?
Yeah, well, I'd just say take a look at the level of the things we have in the charter, and this red light cameras just doesn't seem to rise to the level of significance and importance. If you talk about it being the constitution of the city, it just doesn't seem to me to rise to the level of a constitutional type of regulation to put in a charter that's extremely difficult to change.
Okay. Any other comments? Please vote. Sorry. Yeah, there was who made the second? I think it was Steve.
No one actually, but I'll second.
All right, Steve.
With Mayor Gardner and Councilmember Selich voting no, the motion carries 4-2.
All right. Thank you, committee, for all of your hard work.
Just one more quick.
Yes.
I think one other piece of direction that we need this evening is how many questions you'd like, and if you'd like more than one question, how they're grouped.
I think that we can do one question.
Why?
One, yes. One. Any others? All right. Thank you, committee, for your hard work. Thank you.
I'd like to
public.
chime in too and thank the public as well as the staff that worked on this. We did spend a lot of time, I think a little bit more than we thought, but it was a good process, and I wanted to thank you guys for all the time. Tara, all the department heads that helped out on that.
right.
Thank you. And the council members who joined us too.
Thank you. All right. Motion for reconsideration?
A motion to reconsider the vote on any action taken by the city council at either this meeting or the previous meeting may be made only by one of the council members who voted with the prevailing side.
Is there a motion for reconsideration? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. And I have to sign that for you.